Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It's 11:02, and I'm going to go ahead and kick us off this morning. We've had two eventful days, and I just want to thank everyone for their time and their commitment to this training. This training is being made possible by the United States Department of Agriculture's Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement in partnership with the Southern Rural Development Center at Mississippi State University. Based on the funding provided, we are able to offer this training to you at no cost. And we hope that you have been enjoying the information and the content that we've been providing to you over the last 2 days. I'm going to try to make this morning a little bit more interactive so it doesn't just seem like we're just talking at you. But some of the key things that I want to talk about this morning is the reason why we're offering this training is because we are hoping that eventually over time there will be an increase in the number of states that are offering financial literacy specifically for the farming community. We do financial literacy for households and people who are interested in buying a home, but there's not a consistent level of training in all states with regards to the financial needs of our farmers. So we appreciate you once again for taking the time to sign up and possibly after this training feel motivated in developing your own training in your state, or if your state already has one, enhancing the program that you currently offer. An additional benefit of this training is that we also want to make sure that you understand the role that USDA Farm Service Agency, also known as FSA, plays in the grand scheme of things with regards to agriculture. We want you to see FSA as one of your partners in your training pursuits. This is not something that we want you guys to try to endeavor on your own because it is a lot of information that we try to condense literally into 3 quarter days. It is a 12-hour training. When you decide to offer this training in your state, one of the things you might want to consider is how long do you want your training to be? We did 3 4-hour days, but you guys may want to try to do it over 2 days or try to do it all in one day. But look at the subjects that you want to cover and then also try to identify how much time would you need or would your presenter need to cover the topic with the amount of depth and brevity that is needed for the education to occur. Yesterday, topics focused on credit management, insurance, wills and estate planning, and then we had 2 farmer testimonies. And I'm going to ask for Catherine to pull up our first poll, which is the same question from day one. Based on the information presented on day 2, which topic do you feel comfortable teaching? And I'll give you guys a minute. So the winner is credit management. So that's good. And then in second place was wills and estate planning. Okay. Followed by insurance. The second question is similar to yesterday's question. Which one of those subjects would you possibly invite another professional in to do the training for you? Okay, I can see the results. So insurance, okay, followed by wills and estate planning, credit management. Okay, that's good information. One of the things that, and I keep emphasizing this, you do not have to try to conduct all of this training by yourself. And I will also share that we are in a unique situation. I don't think any of us thought that this pandemic would have lasted as long as it has. And so doing it virtually is something that's new for all of us. So if you were thinking about doing this type of training, probably within the next 6 months, it may have to be virtual. I think we all are missing that face-to-face experience, but I will say that trying to offer this training virtually is unique, but we all have the capacity to do it. All of the trainers that you've met throughout the training will be available outside of this training if you want to pick up the phone and call them. Also, the individuals from the Rural Development Center are also available, as well as myself. So if you're thinking about doing this training and you're going to have to do it virtually, please reach out to us because we don't want anyone to struggle. but also make sure that you reach out and get to know some of your FSA folks that are specifically working with the farm loan area when putting this training together. I am getting ready to share my screen because I just want us to have a little conversation about something Mr. McCarty shared with us in day one. And I'm a unique individual. I'm all about numbers. But Mr. McCarty took the time to share with us the funding that is made available for several of FSA's loan programs, direct, the guaranteed, and the direct farm ownership. And we had Mr. Brooks and Mr. Boley on that same day to kind of give us a quick overview of those loan programs. The thing that stuck out for me the most was the money that went unused, or I would say left on the table. And I just kind of want to get some feedback from you guys. Why do you think this money was left on the table? And you can unmute yourself because there's not too many. I don't think it's too much of an overload to unmute yourself. But I do want to hear from the audience on why almost $597 million left in direct operating loans left on the table, $1.2 billion in guaranteed operating loan money left on the table, and roughly 254, it's so hard for me to say, million left on the table.
I was speaking with a farmer this morning. This is Ann Miller with Penn State Extension.
Hey, Ann. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good.
They are so paperwork adverse. And I think one of your speakers also mentioned something about the information that's in the farmer's head and not on paper, where I was asking him, you know, how are your documents looking? What can we put together? He has nothing on paper. So applying for a loan seemed very daunting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ann. Anybody else want to comment? And I'm trying to get to the chat box.
Hi, good morning. This is Paige with Central State University in Ohio.
Hey, Paige.
Thanks for a great workshop so far. I think my question about the unused funds, I would want to know how many applications were denied and for what amounts and for what reasons. So I think it may be a combination of both a adverse reaction to paperwork and applying for loans, but also what were the reasons that some farmers were denied. And I think knowing that information might be helpful.
Okay. And that's something that we actually did not think about addressing in this training. I think, I don't think I've seen Mr. Brooks log on yet, or Mr. Boley. Well, Mr. Boley is there. I don't know if he can hear us this morning, but they will be talking to us again this afternoon about specifically about the eligibility part. But that is a very good point that we, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think it's an excellent question. Good information we could use.
Okay, so the number of denials.
Yes.
And the reason why. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And that's something for all of you that are participating in this training. When you guys are offering this training, make sure that your farmers understand why so many loans are denied by FSA. One of the things that I would also share is that some people, one, don't want to deal with the government. Number two, loans are not for everybody. I agree with Ann. I have seen the paperwork for USDA. It is very much, it's a lot of it. I also concur, we had Mr. Trainer yesterday who indicated he went by a USDA office just yesterday to pick up something, and he said it was about 40-something pages. So this is feedback that we as individuals, as trainers, can give back to our FSA family members and say, hey, one of the reasons that people are not participating in your program like you would like is that it's too much paperwork. Is there a way to downsize? And I'm not sure, but I think we as citizens first, as educators second, have the right to give feedback to those that we are trying to work with. They can give us feedback on how we can strengthen our programs, and I think that relationship should go back and forth. Another reason that so much money is left on the table is the credit piece. Our farmers are not, and I used to be a banker, I would say bankable. Their credit is not in order. They have tax liens. They haven't been paying their bills on time. They pay late, they pay slow, just don't pay at all. And these are things as trainers that we have to figure out how to establish our training, for lack of a better word, to motivate or encourage our farmers to get their business, their personal business in order before stepping in the door of an FSA loan office. I don't think it would be fair for an FSA loan officer to tell a farmer that their personal affairs is out of order. I think we as educators should prepare our farmers so that when they show up to FSA, for example, they have their business plan. They know what's on their credit report. And I think, if I'm correct, Mr. Brooks talked about that if an individual had something that happened that caused them to be delinquent, like they got sick and they had unexpected medical bills, FSA is not going to hold that against the farmer. So these are things that I want you guys to just think about as you're developing the program in your state, of how you might modify or change the information that we are sharing with you today. But that slide that Mr. McCarty shared with us with day one, I dream and sleep and wake up the next morning thinking about those numbers, because that's a lot of money. And go ahead, Mr. Boley.
And I just wanted to add to that, the question is why so much money is left on the table, as well as, why are so many applicants being denied. The consensus is, I was in farm loans before I came to outreach. The consensus is credit issues. Credit issues, and like you said, as a loan official, we do, talk to them about their credit and things of that nature, but we can't fix it for them. So credit has been a major piece of a lot of denials with the Farm Service Agency. And, we don't even look at the credit score, and we'll talk about that later, but we don't even look at the actual credit score. There's not a certain credit score you have to have. It's the things that we see on the credit to determine if they are feasible to pay this loan back or not. And, like I said, as far as medical bills, yeah, we don't hold that. If it's beyond your control and you can prove that it's beyond your control, then that wouldn't count against you. But on the consensus, credit is the biggest thing that we come across, as well as feasibility. Some of these loans aren't feasible. You may have a high debt to asset ratio. That's another thing, so you look at those two things. So you have a lot of people that are being denied because of that. And that's why we need to partner up with some of these educators, because like you said, if they go there first to be coached up on their credit, when they come to us as an agency, they'll be better aware of what we're looking at on the credit and have their credit in line. Because we do look at that. But like I said, the credit score is not the issue. It's the things on the credit and the timeliness of payments and things of that. So it would be credit issues that we are looking at that cause so many denials.
And Joe, I'd like, well, when you get through.
No. Go ahead, Mr. McCarty. Go ahead.
I'd like to add in there just to make everything balanced out, because I've been with the agency a long time myself. This is atypical. This is not normal, okay? And after we had a conversation, you and I went back and I looked myself to try to get a better understanding of those numbers. And two things. One, we were getting ready to go into an election year. I worked up there with the politics part now. We were going into an election year. And so in order to get that rural vote, a lot of money was put into programs to try to assist farmers all over the United States. The problem was the money was put there, but then COVID hit. That caused a lot of offices to just shut down. And so you couldn't get into the offices because there have been years where we run out of money. I think Terrick can relate to that. So it's not that year after year after year. I don't want to give the impression that year after year after year, this amount of money is being left on the table. It's just that in 2020, it was. And I thought that that was very telling. So I want to make sure that I get the other side of that as well.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty, because you know I'll take a number and run with it. But at the end of the day, we as educators, especially those of us working in extension, we like to look at data. And we don't want to present just on feelings. We want to be able to share with our audience some raw data so that they understand where we're coming from. So when you're putting together your program, however you decide to design it, making sure you have that credit piece built in. Ms. Banks did the credit management piece for us yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. So that is a very, very important piece, and making sure you have your USDA FSA person tied in that same day, either have them right before or right after so they marry together because they complement each other very nicely. So I'm going to get off my pulpit on that subject, but I want you guys to be able to access the numbers so that you understand how much money is out there. And the last thing that I forgot to highlight was when Mr. McCarty had those 3 numbers highlighted, that was targeted funding specifically for persistent poverty, socially disadvantaged audiences, which is what a lot of the 1890 community works with, the 1994s work with, and the Hispanic serving institutions. So those of us that are working in those circles, even our 1862s, even though sometimes it is perceived they work with a different audience, it is still a separate pot of money that is out there for our audience. So I want you guys to be aware of that. And also remember, there are no grants whatsoever for individual farmers to receive. But there is money available for individuals like you representing organizations that want to provide technical assistance to farmers. You want to do outreach activities and things of that nature. So I want to make sure that's a key point that you guys remember when you're putting your program together. Also, I wanted some feedback on how you guys felt about the testimonies from Mr. Trainer and Ms. Coleman. Did you see any value in having actual farmers being a part of this program? And I'm gonna start picking on people if you guys don't talk to me.
Hi, this is Ashley from Central State University in Ohio. I thought it was incredibly valuable. I really enjoyed hearing from the farmers. I think for me, virtual learning is a challenge for a lot of people, especially those of us who enjoy that kind of more hands-on learning. And I felt like adding the farmer's point of view, especially on a virtual platform, really helped add dimension to the topic for me. So I thought it was great.
Thank you, Ashley. Anybody else?
This is Laurie White with Community Farm Alliance in Kentucky. I just wanted to say, I think a lot of times farmers are more open to hearing from other farmers, and that if you're doing a presentation with farmers, that kind of peer-to-peer advice can be really helpful.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm so glad you said that. And I'm a mom, and for some reason, when I tell my son something, it goes right over his head. But if one of his colleagues says it, he's in for it. You know what? I think they're right. And I say that farmers talking to farmers are awesome. They trust each other. They're both in the same profession. And sometimes they just feel like we're talking heads. We're just educators. We're not really out there doing this type of work, which is a myth because a lot of my ag agents are also farmers. So that is somewhat of a myth. Now, Joy is not a farmer, but bringing in farmers who have gone through your training, who have participated in FSA programs, and allowing them to be truthful and honest. I was not aware of what Mr. Trainer or what Ms. Coleman were about to say, to be perfectly honest with you. But when you're thinking about incorporating farmers into your training, you might want to prep them or talk to them first. so that they understand why they're talking and what they're talking about. We're not asking for them to divulge their personal information unless they want to. They don't have to divulge what their sales are, or if they're past due on their taxes, or if they got denied for a loan. But what has the experience been like? And, giving more value to the programming that you do, I think is really, really valuable. So, with that being said, um, I have one more poll. And the question is, and well, you know what? I'm going to hold up on the poll, Catherine. I'm going to do it at the end. But I'm going to tell you what the question is to give you time to think about it. Based on the information that we have shared with you over the next 3 days, are you now comfortable doing this type of training in your state, or facilitating or developing this type of programming in your state? And it's worded much better than how I just said it. I haven't finished my coffee yet. But with that being said, I want to just give you the lay of the land for today. This morning, we're going to conclude our wills and estate planning. Then we're going to go into identity theft. And then we're going to talk about succession planning. And then we're going to talk about savings and investments. And I'm going to do a plug because I love all of my presenters and hopefully they love me. But we also have to understand that some of these topics are not as exciting as others. So we have to be creative on how we deliver this information to our audience so that they stay engaged. So we didn't do as many activities as we would have liked to because we're doing this virtually. But when you are doing this, breaks, activities involving the audience are 3 key pieces in order to keep your event successful and keeping people engaged, and having presenters that are just awesome, that are passionate about their topic. So with that being said, I'm going to let Mr. Reed go ahead and share his screen and finish this off with our wills and estate planning. And I appreciate you guys so much for joining us for our final day of our farm financial literacy training. Mr. Reed?
Like Joy mentioned, some of these topics are not as enjoyable as some others. But like you said, it is a lot different when we do these workshops in person, because when we actually talking to farmers themselves, they pretty much have experienced most of the things that we actually talk about. So it's not hard to get feedback. It's not hard for them to tell their story or their testimony. So it kind of lead them into sharing, and other farmers to share also once they hear somebody else talk about their life experiences. Well, but when we talk about the farm literacy component, we pretty much try to be holistic and address everything that possible that we've heard from farmers talk about over the number of years that we've been hosting these type of trainings. So one of the things we actually talked about was, being godparents and guardians. And when I do a new training class, I always ask them, how many of you guys are in the class are godparents or considered guardians of some child? And you always have like 1 or 2 that raise their hands and say, I'm a godparent. I'm like, well, how do you know? What kind of documentation do you actually have to say that you're the godparent, you're the guardian of this child? And most of them say we don't have anything. We just was basically told that. And then when the child was baptized or christened at church, we were there with them, and they told the whole congregation that that we're the godparents. And that's great and that's wonderful though. But what happens if you have nothing in writing, no documentation that solidifies or validates this particular wish of the parents? Say for instance, like I think it was the Michael Jackson's family. When he actually passed away, he had nobody specified as be the guardian of his kids. So of course the grandmother of the kids from Michael Jackson's side wanted to take over the kids. So what if Janet or Tito or Marlon or one of the other uncles wanted to be godparents of the kids? With a small family, you may have uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, all want to be guardians. Sometimes because they love the kids, they want to be able to provide the best quality of life for them. Sometimes they may think that there's some money involved. So again, everything we talk about yesterday and today as it relates to estate planning and wills, we try to help you put things in place to alleviate some of the frictions and fighting that could actually come from not preparing, not putting things in writing. So be mindful of that too, because a lot of times we start talking about, godparents and guardians. Most of the time it's just designed so our kids can get some gifts on their birthdays, at Christmas, and they decide to go off to college, buy them some college things, but is it really designed for what is it designed for? Created a long time ago. Basically, they were designed to have somebody, if both parent passes away, there was somebody who's going to be on deck who have agreed to take over these kids' lives and to raise them in a godlike fashion, the same way that the parents would have raised them, and to be able to provide a quality of life for them, which encompasses feeding, clothing, shelter, counseling, advice, and so on, to their kids aging old enough to be able to leave home. And that requires a substantial amount of care and love. Because what happens if you say you're the godparent and then you already have a house full of kids yourself, and then you have to take on another child? Are you in a financial position to take on another child? So when it comes down to preparing to be a godparent, that conversation you have with the original parents, what are they going to do to help you to be able to move forward to take care of those kids? A simple thing could be they could establish a insurance policy that at their demise, that money will go toward the godparent or the guardian to help take care and raise those kids, because they may have to, add on another bathroom or another bedroom to their house, or have to buy a car for that child if it's like a teenager and so forth. So just be mindful that when you talk to those farmers, they need to really think about who's on deck to take care of that kid if something happens to them. And we do talk about farming as a risky business, and it's dangerous. So we need to be mindful though, what are we planning to do for our kids to make sure they're gonna be taken care of? So what I've done, I threw in a couple of example scenarios to help see that some people actually have thought about the what ifs things can happen. Here we have Sam, a widower with 3 grown children. He owns property with a net worth of about $510,000. He creates a will leaving all of his property equally to the children. He specified that if any child dies before him, that child's share is to be divided equally between the surviving children. You see, in this scenario, he has already decided a plan B or a backup to if this should happen. So that if one should die before him, that child's shares are going to be equally divided between the rest of the children. So you don't have the children trying to decide, well, I was closer to him, I was next to him in line in terms of being, child number 3 or child number 4, to keep them from fighting over thinking one deserved more than the other one. Sam had already decided on how it's going to be broken down between the other children. Again, your thinking is to try and alleviate friction and fighting or arguments over wealth, because again, my slogan, when it comes down to money, people act funny, whether you are related or not related. Sometimes it does make a big difference. So we need to try to do everything in our powers to alleviate that if that's possible. Another example, Heather and Jerome in their late 30s. They own a home, 2 cars, and some savings. Their net worth total $400,000. They have 1 child, Mark, who's age 11. Now, each person has a will leaving all of his or her property to the other. If they die at the same time, Mark is to receive all of the property. Heather and Jerome agreed that Heather's brother would care for Mark and manage their property until Mark turned 18. Again, you see, the husband and wife, Heather and Jerome, they sat down and already thought about what will happen to Mark. Because he's age 11, who's going to take care of him until he gets to the age of 18, to where everything we leave him, he won't be able to get it until then. So somebody had to step in and take care of him from age 11 to age 18. So they've already decided that Heather's brother would take care of Mark and manage the property until he turns to the age of 18. But again, though, so what if Mark is not financially in a position to, Heather's brother's not in a financial position to take care of Mark until he turned 18. That's why it's so important to try to look at what kind of financial assistance that the current parent could leave or assist the new guardian or the new godparent to help them financially be stable to take care of another child. Another scenario, Barbara is a single mother with 2 teenage children. Though she's not on great terms with her ex-husband, he's a decent father and pays child support more or less on time. Now, Barbara leaves all of her property equally to her children because she does not want her ex-husband managing her money left to her children. If she should die, she uses her will to appoint her sister Debbie to manage each child's property until that child turns 18. Again, Barbara already thought about it. She knows her ex-husband. You say he paid child support pretty much somewhat on time, but not necessarily regularly, consistently. So she knows maybe he's not that financially stable. So she don't think he probably would actually manage the fund that she would leave in control of. He probably would manage it well. So she knows that her sister will be doing a very job. So what she does, she leaves her sister in charge of the child's property until that child turns 18. Again, you want to, especially if you have young children, you want to make sure you actually have somebody in place. Now you probably be assured, your grandparents of the child will probably step in and take care of it, or your brother, sister would be, the aunt and uncle would have step in and take care of the children. But are you sure? Are you sure they're in a financial position to be able to do that? Are you sure that they will want to do that? So in order to alleviate that, you would need to have that conversation. And if you guys both on the same page that they will be able to step in and do this, become the godparent or become the guardian, they need to make sure they're going to be in a financial position by what you can leave them or what they already have in place to be able to take care of that child till the child is old enough to be able to get the property themselves and to be able to then, manage from then on. So the last will and testament. And the word last will and testament is so key because your will should be the last will in your last testament. Because again, though, if it's properly done, what it does, it totally revokes any will that you may have done before. And hopefully, if you have ever done a will some years ago, that hopefully you've actually redone it to some point to where the other one is no longer in existence, that it has been updated, and it has all the proper wishes that you actually would want in your will, and that encompasses all of your property that you actually own, past, now, and future, even your retirement and so forth, that is properly going to be a part of your estate plan, and it's going to be dedicated or told to be dedicated to a certain individual at a certain time and in a certain way. So, but there's no specific format in terms of how the will should be laid out, but there's some similarities to most of them, but there's no exact way that it has to be done, because again, some can be totally handwritten, but again, though, there is no set format. So we look at a will starting out the beginning part. It said, known all men by these present. Basically, all it's saying that everybody that's present within my realm of people, in my city, in my town, in my county, in my state, that know me. They basically here says that I, Anthony Reed, in the city, town of Warren, in the county, town of Vicksburg, in the county of Warren, and in the state of Mississippi. Basically saying that everybody in those locations, that's how I am actually known by that particular name. Then it goes on and says, being of sound and disposing mind and memory. Being of sound and disposing mind and memory. What does that word disposing mean? Disposing means to get rid of things, which means your mind has to be totally functional to be able to not only recall, but to remember things, and then to be able to alleviate things from your mindset, which means that your mind is totally functioning properly. That's why it says being of sound and disposing mind and memory. Then it says do make, which means I am declaring that this is who I am, and this is the city, county, state, and then I'm declaring that I am of sound and disposing mind and memory. Then I am do make, and I publish and declare that this will right here is my last will and testament. And hereby says it hereby revokes all wills by me anytime heretofore made, which means that this will right here revokes any will that I may have done prior to. If this will that I have before me has been properly written and properly witnessed, then it does revoke all the one before. But if it does not have the appropriate signatures are not properly done, then it does not revoke the one before, because then the one prior still is in play. So it could go on. It could say first, I'd exec my executrix or executor, or it could be an administrator, hereout the name to pay all my funeral expenses, administration expenses of my estate, including inheritance and succession taxes, state or federal, which may be occasioned by the passage of or succession of any interest in this state under the terms either in this instrument or in a separate inter vivos trust instrument, and all my just debt, exceptional mortgage notes secured by mortgage upon real estate. Now, it's very specific here. Yours may not be as specific, but you can use it as a potential format for how you actually construct, first this, second this, and third, and so on. But you would definitely start off when you have somebody who's been appointed to oversee your estate, giving them knowledge that this is what I want to take place, who's going to cover and oversee all of your bills being paid, and separating of your estate to your appropriate heirs or beneficiaries, which encompasses your debt, your mortgage, and so forth. Then you could go second. All the rest, residue, and remainder of my estate. So you're going to pretty much cover most of the things in one, but then some things you may have left out. So you can go with a second clause here that say all the rest, residue, and remainder of my estates, both real and personal, of whosoever kind or character and whosoever situated shall be divided into. So everything else that you leave beyond that is not listed in one, you can put it in two, and then you can say if anything left and how you want it to be distributed to your appropriate heirs or beneficiaries. So it all depends on what you have and how you want it to be stated. You basically can just use it in this set format. And a will and a estate could be very specific in terms of how you want your funeral to be carried out. There was a gentleman in one of my classes. He was from Louisiana. He talked about his neighbor was very specific in terms of how he wanted his funeral to go. He said that his neighbor, once he passed, he wanted to be put in a carriage, horse and carriage, and to be carried from the funeral home to the church and to the cemetery. But there was a stopping point in between. He wanted to go on a particular street that was on the way to the cemetery. And on this street was a bar. He wanted the casket to be taken off of the carriage, to be taken into the bar. And the executor or the administrator of the estate was to go in and to be able to buy drinks to everybody in the bar. And then once they down the drinks, the caskets would be taken back out, put it on the carriage, and then taken to the cemetery. So it all depends on exactly what you want, but you be very mindful of your specific in terms of who you ask to carry out these things for you. Because again, if you're going to want somebody to carry out this wishes like a horse and carriage and so forth, you're going to appoint somebody, but make sure they know these are your wishes and know sure the thing that they are actually wishing to carry out for you. Because some things could be as extreme. Because I've actually seen people who actually have taken deceased bodies and have popped them up inside of bars and actually buy drinks to those that are there. For some strange reason, some people carried out those wishes. It probably better if they didn't ask me to do it, but it just depends on what your wishes are. Then thirdly, you say, I hereby appoint as my executrix is my last will and testament, and I direct all such persons shall serve without bond, witness hereof, or hereunto set my hands and seal, so on. So again, it really depends on how you want to lay it down. It can be similar to this, it could be different, but it basically all will have the same type of information into your particular document. But all these documents need to have the appropriate signatures on them. Your two witnesses, again, we talked about witnesses yesterday, they cannot be blood relatives. Can't be anybody who's going to benefit from your demise listed in the will per se. It shouldn't be your doctors or your attending physician. Because again, you never know what those people mindset is, because they may have signed off on this, even though you may not be in your right frame of mind in terms of how the court is going to see this. So make sure these are people that you are not related to, will not benefit from your demise, and they are not your physicians or anyone from the hospital that you will actually have been in. And there's also too, there's some called self-certification too. What you could do is to have your witnesses, you and your witnesses sign off on this document in front of a notary, and the notary would actually notify this particular document. So if anything should happen, basically it is not mandatory that you actually bring those witnesses in to court to probate hearing. You could just use that particular document on your self-certification as well. Because sometimes your witness may have moved out the state, they may no longer be alive, or for whatever reason, they may not be financially able to come to to the corporate seating. So it's better to have this as a backup plan as well. But it is not mandatory that you actually have it notarized. So some steps to estate planning, like a checklist, definitely need to make a will, consider a trust. There are different kinds of trusts. Only thing I would say too is just make sure when you do develop a trust that you know that there's a one that's revocable, and one that is irrevocable. So when you make sure if your mind could change somewhere down the road, then you don't want an irrevocable trust, because then it's just that irrevocable, it can't be changed. So be mindful of that as well. Make your healthcare directive. Again, healthcare directive is also the same thing as a living will. Basically what you're doing, you're specifying specifically what your wishes are when it comes to your demise. You have already decided what you would want to happen to you in case you get to a point to where it's a decision has to be made whether they will pull the plug or not. Instead of you putting that decision on one of your relatives, you have already decided on this for yourself. Because a heck of a position to be put in to make that call. Again, I mentioned yesterday in a scenario where one young gentleman, sisters was in a coma, and they decided not to pull the plug, and she came out of a coma like a few weeks later. So I think it's best that you be mindful of those decisions for yourself more so than put that burden on your family members or loved ones. Then protect your child's property, like in a scenario, if a child could possibly be underage, if you should pass away, already have in place somebody to oversee that child's property until they turn to the appropriate age, already pinpoint a person, already make sure they know, and already have fill out the appropriate documentation. Majority of these forms that you can get from online, my only recommendation as with that is that laws do change, and maybe those things may not be the most updated, accurate form online. Well, I suggest you can use those as something to go by from offline. You may take it down and fill it out and take it to a person who specializes in estate planning, an attorney. That way you have gone through and created some of the information they're going to need to fill out the appropriate form. Because what you want to do is try to spend as much time with an attorney putting your estate together, which also should save you some money as well. File beneficiary forms definitely is a part of your checklist. And again, you need to be mindful though that some call a contingent beneficiary, which is a backup person or a plan B person, just in case something happens to your first beneficiary person, then you already have a backup person to receive those benefits. And I mentioned yesterday too, also, when you start doing the POD, payable on death, you cannot have a backup person as a beneficiary person on your checking savings account. That's only for a POD though. But just for your will and estate planning, it's good to have a contingent beneficiary completed. All right, so 7, consider life insurances. Again, a good thing to have. You may want to get insurance to help pay off some of the debt that you may actually have accumulated, so it doesn't withdraw everything from your estate. Then too, you might have insurance policy left for your godparent or your guardian, just in case they may need the additional funds to help them to move forward. Cover funeral expenses. Make sure you be mindful though, again, in case you actually have living in one state and you want your body to be moved to a different state to be buried, you need to make sure that funds are allocated for transferring bodies from one state to the next for the funeral, because otherwise that expense is going to be on the family. Again, payable on death, your pod. Making final arrangement, organ, body donations, disposition of body, burial in terms of cremation, all that needs to be decided and laid out. Again, make sure you appoint somebody who's going to really carry out your wishes. Because again, if you don't put anything together, then you're going to leave it up to the courts to appoint an administrator of your estate who's not going to know your wishes, but they're going to do what's called decent distribution, and they're going to distribute your property according to the state guidelines and regulations. Important documents to be stored in a safekeeping place: wills, trusts, insurance policy, real estate deeds, certificates of stocks, bond, annuities. And it doesn't do any good for you to store this information in a safe place and then nobody know where they are or even have access to get to them. If you're going to have a safe, make sure some person or a couple of people in your family will have access to the safe or have a key to the safe, so that at your demise, they'll be able to get those particular documents so they can't see that your wishes can be carried out. Or you could actually, if you have a relationship with your attorney, these things could also be kept with them if they're willing to do so as well. But just find a good place to have those documents stored so that it will be found. So again, when it comes not need to make those decisions about who's going to receive what and how and when receive from that estate, you actually have documentation as to how it should be carried out. Also, bank accounts, mutual funds, safe deposit boxes, retirement plan, 401ks, IRAs, your debt, credit card, mortgage, loan, utilities, and unpaid taxes, time trust for funeral, prepayment plans, and all your final arrangement instructions. All this need to be known. Somebody to know where they are. Somebody to have access to each and every one of these documents. Because again, these are important documents to ensure that your wishes will be carried out in the way that it needs to be done, and it's done in a timely fashion to alleviate some of the friction and fighting within the family, but also to ensure that you want to be mindful though that they may be going through an emotional time frame of just trying to live and without you being there. And it's gonna be kind of rough to deal with that emotionally, then also have to deal with the business side of your demise. It's gonna be rough for a person. You know, we all make bad decisions when we are emotional. And basically that's the end. I just want to remind you guys that we are not trying to be a certified estate planner. What we try to do is just provide some basic information to our clientele. So when you talk to your farmers, basically just a matter, what you're just trying to do is just give them some information. So when they go and sit down with a certified estate planner, they will have a better idea. They feel a little bit more comfortable what type of question to ask, what things they want to have included in their estate plan. So it kind of helps them to move this process along just a little faster. And your overall goal is to try and alleviate friction as much as possible so that we will still be loving after somebody has passed away. We'll be able to get along and make sure the property is distributed and make sure the wishes of our loved ones are basically followed to the letter if it is possible. Do you have any questions or discussions?
Okay, we have a question from Lori White. Are there any special considerations for farmers who wish for their land to be kept as farmland?
Well, I guess the first question I would ask when they say be kept as farmland, do you want to kept as farmland and be transferred over to somebody else in your family, or you just want to stay farmland beyond your farming time frame? Because there are different things. So there's some things that we work with the farmers if they want to transfer, like succession planning that we talked a little bit about later on in the day, about how to transfer your property over to your children or to your children's children. And then if you don't have anybody in place in your family that wants to take over the operation, do you look for it being transferred over or sold to a neighbor? That way you can still stay in farming and you won't lose it. I mean, you just want to transfer just the farm itself and not necessarily the farmhouse. So it just depends on where they're going with the question. But I'm more than happy and willing to talk to them offline about it.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Any other questions on this topic? And as I'm monitoring the chat box, things for you guys as presenters and future trainers to think about. For many of us, we work at universities and colleges, and some of these topics that we're covering, I want to commend Alcorn State University for putting that disclaimer statement at the end of this presentation. They also did that yesterday. We can get in trouble in some cases on what we choose to educate our audiences on. So in cases like taxes or wills and estates, it is in our best interest to find a professional who is certified or licensed to speak on these topics so that it minimizes the liability and risk to our places of employment, because we are doing this because we love what we do, but at the end of the day, we do not want to jeopardize our workplace and or our employment. So if you choose to present on this topic and you're comfortable, I would highly recommend using that last slide that gives a disclaimer, releasing the university from any type of harm or danger. And that is also not the views of the institution. So that's something for you guys to think about as you're putting your information together. Um, and I think I'm going to kill that soapbox. With that being said, I want to keep us moving so that maybe we can finish a little early. No promises. But our next presentation is coming from the wonderful Carolyn Banks and is on the topic of identity theft. So at this time, I'm going to mute myself and turn the program over to Ms. Banks.
What I'm gonna speak to you all today is about identity theft. But first, I wanted to say that even though we teach the farmers, everyone in the family is involved. So when we talk about when we talk to the farmer, we're not just necessarily talking to the farmer himself or herself. We're talking to the entire farm family. So we teach identity theft to farmers because sometimes we as consumers are so careless about our personal information, especially our farmers. I've heard a lot of stories from farmers where their personal information was stolen, while they was working in the field. But most time while they're out in the field, then they leave their vehicles unattended. Most time if they're in their farm truck, they go out in the field and they just assume that because they're out there, most time they're out there by themselves and nobody's gonna bother anything. But all it takes is that's a perfect time for a pass by someone that has something that's really not good on their mind. It's a good opportunity to steal their identity, because most of the time they have their personal information in their truck. A lot of time farmers put documents, especially if they've gone to the co-op or other places that they've gone, and they leave all this personal information inside their vehicle. So you got months that goes by, years that go by, and then they haven't realized that their identity has been stolen. But all this time that's going by, then all during the time, this damage is being done to them. So also, this is a time when the farmer goes to the lender, and it's time for them to borrow some money. And then at that point, they realize that their identity has been stolen. Okay, at this point also, they have to allow them time to correct all this information, to prove to the lender that this is not mine. So it goes back to that credit information. So they're not able to get the loan because of the identity theft. And so if it's something that they want, at that time period, they're not able to get it. Sometimes it takes months to clear it up. Sometimes it even takes years. It just all depends on the amount of the theft that has taken place. So identity when it affects that farmer, it affects that entire farm family. So not only is it affect their credit, but it affects their credit score. Now I know some lenders may not, like FSA, may not totally go rely on the score itself, but if you have some information that's on your credit score that's not yours and it's affecting your credit score, then you're going to have to allow that time to correct that information. So that's why it's so important that we need to make sure and be mindful and be protective of our identity. Next slide. Okay, first of all, what is identity theft? Actually, what identity theft is when someone, without our knowledge, that acquire a piece of our personal information, which might be our driver's license, social security information, that they use it to commit some type of fraud. And this is considered as identity theft. Now, there are different types of identity theft. You have tax identity theft, you have child identity theft, and also you have medical identity theft. So we need to be very mindful of our personal information. But there are things that we can do to protect that. So first thing that you want to do, if you know that you have been a victim of identity theft, you want to make sure that you contact, where you feel that the fraud has taken place, you want to make sure that you contact that person. Also, you want to place a fraud alert. It goes back to what we were talking about yesterday about the freeze. The freeze actually protect you because when you had a freeze, you have that person identifiable PIN number that only you. So it protects you. You put that PIN number on there and you lift it. So it's up to you to take control. But if that alert is on there, it's also letting someone alert you that your information is being used. So it's always good to have that on your report. And then you want to make sure if you've been victim identity theft, to make sure that you get a police report because all this information is going to be valuable later on. So the next thing that you would want to do, if you just recently opened any type of accounts, you want to make sure, especially if there are new accounts and they're new accounts in your name, you want to make sure that you close those accounts. And also, this would be a perfect time for you to go on and look at your credit reports and see if there's anything else on your credit report that's not yours. So this is a good time to take care of your credit report. Next slide. Now, remember, as being a victim of identity theft, there are other people and agencies that you might want to contact, because once they steal your personal information, that means they have access to everything that they need for them to, if they want to have utilities in your name, most time phones and all that, even though you might be able to do certain things, but it's just a process, and maybe the damage has already been done before you get the opportunity to actually do something about it. So these are some of the additional offices listed here on the screen that you might want to contact, especially if you have any type of checking or savings account. Those are things that you immediately want to, and because it only takes a minute to steal your identity, and it doesn't take long for them to actually destroy it. So what you have built up for a lifetime, it could be taken away from you in just minutes of hours. So you want to make sure that you're protective of your information. Next slide. Identity theft can happen to anyone, me, you, anybody. But there are some things that you can do to reduce the risk of being a victim of identity theft. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we can actually do to protect our identity. Next slide. Now, there are some people that are most targeted than other people. You have children, you have the senior citizen, people that's a member of the military, and then we always have those social media users. That's most of us are social media users. And then once you've been a victim before, usually you end up being a repeated victim. And sometimes, it's sad to say, but even the deceased is also targeted as well. Okay, as far as the children and the senior citizen, we know that everyone has a Social Security card, has a Social Security number. So that means that everybody is at risk to be a victim. But they target mostly out of this group, they mostly target the very young and the very old. And the thing about with the children are targeted because the thieves, this is just like having a new Social Security number. So they establishing credit. So what they will establish credit because it just, they look at it as new credit. So what those parents of those children want to do is make sure that they monitor their credit report as well. And I think I mentioned yesterday, especially when students started in 11th grade, even so much is going on. If you want to go back earlier than that, it will not hurt for you to monitor, because you'll be surprised once people steal your information, what they can do with it. The seniors target most over the telephone. And usually, especially when seniors are left at home alone, and then you have all type of callers calling them. So actually they'll do this over the phone, and they'll also do these through the internet. So if you have seniors, be mindful and kind of like monitor what's going on, because they target those those two especially. You have the people that's in the military. The military, they are mostly affected usually in their credit card and their bank fraud. Those are mostly targeted with the military. And just to give you a little bit statistic about the military, in 2018, the total military consumer credit card fraud reported 10,590. In 218, the total military consumer bank fraud reported 5,723. So the military consumer report of employment or tax-related fraud, it increased at least about 85% between the years of 2017 and 2018. Now getting on to the social media users, just last year, it was reported that 9,439 emails of social media identity theft that was reported, which was 23%. That was increased from 2017. Now you have the reported victim, people who has previously been affected by identity theft. They have a greater risk for future identity theft because they realize that those people, if they was careless the first time, they're basically, trying to alert to see, are they just as careless as before? So according to the Center for Victim Research, 7 to 10% of the United States population are victim identity fraud each year, and 21 of those percent experience multiple identity fraud. So these are the repeat victims. Now, when it comes to the deceased, they target deceased, and what they do actually, of course, the obituary are public records. So they get asset through the Social Security Administration, what they call a master death file. And they actually steal these people's identity. And what they refer to is they have a name for it. They call it ghosting. And ghosting goes unnoticed. So the surviving family members, most of the time, they are not even aware of this going on. So these are some of the things that even though we're talking and we target we talk to the farmers, but we also want them to be aware that they are not, it's just not them, it's talking to their whole entire farm family. Next slide. Now there is Identity Theft and Assumption Deterrent Action Act, which is knowingly transfer or uses without lawful authority a means of identification of another person with the intent to commit or to aid or abet any unlawful activity that constitutes a violation of federal law or that constitute a felony under inapplicable state or local law. So it is against the law, so that is a crime. So identity theft is a crime, and because of the economy, the way it is, it's continued to rise. So everybody needs to be mindful and watch their surroundings, because they're always use this saying, crook is always a step ahead. So where you're trying to be protected, they're trying to find ways to override that. Next slide, please. Now, there are ways that thieves going to steal your information, whether you're on the job or in your mail. Thieves will go into the trash. They will steal from your personal wallet. They'll use your phone. They'll steal emails. Now, stealing records and information while you're on the job. That's why you have to be very mindful and trust people. You have to be mindful who you trust. So stealing your mail, including when they're stealing your mail, this includes bank statements, credit card statements. If anyone has offered you any bank offers, you have new checks that come through the mail. You have your tax information that comes through the mail. And what they do, they go through your trash. So when they go through your trash, they're looking. A lot of times we don't burn our trash. We just put trash, just in the can and throw it out. But while you're throwing it out, then they're those ones that's looking through your trash. And of course, they're gonna, if they can take from your wallet, but any personal information that they can get, because really all they really, once they have your social security number, that's mostly all they need in order for them to start doing the damage that they can do. Next slide. Now this is how thieves use this information. And what they do, they call the credit card company. And they pretend to be you. And they change your mailing address. It's just like, I'm Carolyn Banks. I call and I want to say, well, I want to change my mailing address. If I give them some of the information that they ask for, they're going to assume that it's me, and they're going to change my address as I have requested. And at that point, they open up new credit cards account in my name. But remember, it's not going to the victim's real address. Is going to the person that has committed the crime. Is going. So they're where they have their time and the opportunity to keep getting new accounts and continue to make that identity theft even more, more worse than what it is. So this is just how they use your information. Next slide. The thieves, they use cell phones. They establish phones or wireless service in your name. They make long distance calls. A lot of times they're making long distance calls, not only within the United States, but they are call being made all outside the United States. Then they'll put utilities in your name. And so all you stuck with all this information, but all this identity theft is going on, and then you're not aware of what's going on. Also, what they do is purchase vehicles. I had a situation, I used to work for the Department of Human Services. During that time, vehicles was a part of eligibility. So there was a senior and there was a junior. The mother was no longer with the senior, but she had a child, junior. Basically what they did, they were able to use their social security number because the senior and the junior's social security number was so close as far as in numbers. I guess they used that number and they already had the name. So that person, he was able to actually purchase a vehicle and miss that child's credit up. And what happened is that that's not straight. So when the child becomes an adult and gets ready, especially if he goes to college and get ready to apply for different loans, and they have this standing out there, all this information has to be cleared up. So this is another situation when it comes to car loans. Next slide. Here you have your driver's license and your social security number. These are the two most important. Please, these can get your identity, such as your social security card and your driver's license. They will even go to the point of placing their own picture on your driver's, on that driver's license. And when someone stop you, they assume that that's you. And where actually they'll think it's you, but actually it's the victim, but you'll get, you end up being in jail for something that you don't even know anything about. So you need to be mindful. I would suggest anybody, especially, I know we all have to carry our driver's license, but when it comes to the social security number, we should all know our own social security number, is to learn our social security number, and if all possible, to make sure that we leave our social security card. Don't carry it in our wallets or in our purse. If we can, we just leave it at home. Next slide. This is something else thieves will do. They'll take your information, they open up accounts. If they got your checking account, they have everything that they need. They have your bank statement. So actually, these thieves can open this account and they can make electric transfers, so they can transfer money out of your account into their account. They can also sit there, if they have your checks, they can sit there and write bad checks. So it's also good to have a good relationship with your banker, because most of the time, and there goes again of having those alerts and everything, when something is out of the norm, if you have a good working relationship with your banker, that they alert and let you know whether, you know, something is out the norm for them, and they'll contact you before the thief get too far gone with your information. And in fact, they will even block it if all necessary. Next slide. Yesterday, we talked about ways that you can protect your identity. I won't go over this in detail because I talked about the credit freeze and how we can protect our information. We talked about the credit freeze yesterday, how you can put a freeze on your account, and it's good. And I think someone mentioned, you know, how would it affect the farmer? But that goes back to that farmer being out there, just say he was in the field, and how they leave their vehicles unlocked. And if you would have had a freeze on it, then even if they would have stolen his information, they still wouldn't have been able to do anything because everything was froze. And the only person that has access to that pen would be him, unless he would have given it to someone else. So that's that's something to keep in mind. Next page, please. Next slide. We also talked about the 3 types of fraud alert. If you don't want to put the freeze on there, those are the alerts. We talked about that yesterday. So those are the different alerts. In next slide, please. And the next slide also talks about it was how you request alert. That's if you're doing active duty. So you basically just contact your credit bureaus. And yesterday we talked about the 3 major credit bureaus. So it's just a matter of contacting them and putting the alert on. So you want to make sure that you always have an alert with all your credit cards. I know we talked about the average American having at least 4. I would suggest maybe just to have 2. If you got a major credit card, and just have 1 other. Because the more credit cards that you have, then you remember that's more debt that you're getting into. So you just want to be mindful of that as well. Next slide, please. We also talked about the credit freeze, because some of this information that we talked about when it comes to credit and identity theft, it kind of like, overlap each other. But that's how important it is, because it's important. Because even when the FSA was talking about, they really just don't, look at the credit score. They don't look at the credit score, but they look what's in your credit report. So that's why it's so important for you to make sure that you have these alerts and these things on your report, and it alerts you and lets you know what's going on, because your credit report is one of the most important documents other than your birth certificate. Your credit report, I look at it, I could tell you the best way to tell you that your birth certificate is your identity. Where you look at it, your credit report is your financial identity. So it's just equally important. Your birth certificate is going to carry you out through your life, and so is that credit report. So that's how important it is. So we want to keep up and make sure that we keep it clean. Now, next slide. Keeping up with personal information on your credit report, there are some things that I'm going to mention to you as far as keeping your personal information, especially with this day and time, because of COVID and everything, all of us, we've offline, keeping up with your and securing your information offline. You want to make sure that you lock your financial documents and records in a safe place at home. Make sure you lock your wallet if you got a purse, or even if you at work. You want to make sure that you have a safe place at work to lock it up. I would suggest that, you tell your clientele to limit to what they carry inside their purse. When you go out, you want to only take the identity that you need. You have your credit card or your debit card, and all the other cards like your social security cards and that type of information, you want to leave them at home unless it's for a need. So before you share your information, even if you're at a workplace or a business or tending to business, even with your child, or you might have to go to the doctor. When people are asking you for your information, you want to make sure that you safeguard that information, and you kind of like want to be reluctant about sharing it because you want to know what they want, what they want to do with it. And it's okay to ask them, when they ask you for your personal information, you want to make sure that you they tell you what's going to happen with it. Also, you want to make sure if you have any receipts or anything that you shred that information. A lot of times we get credit information through the mail, credit offers, even though we have no interest in it, and we have a habit of just throwing them into the trash. So instead of throwing them in the trash, we need to make sure we shred them. That same go as a credit application, insurance information. If we have some position statements, bank accounts, bank statements, if there are some expired cards, any document that's important, because all those documents is going to carry some valuable information. So you want to make sure that all that is destroyed. Also, some of us have prescription bottles and our information is on there. You want to make sure that you destroy those labels. I know with my bottles, what I do, I take that information off. I just tear it off before I throw it away, because you got to remember that thief is always going to be looking out and see what they can get hold to. Taking out mail to the post office. Instead of, some of us live in locations where we can just go outside and just stick the mail in the mailbox, so when the mail carrier comes along, they can just pick it up. I would suggest that you would take that mail to the post office so you'll make sure that it get there, because sometimes when you leave mail out there and then a thief feel that you're not at home, that they will come there and they will, retrieve your mail while you're not there. Also, if you're on vacation, thinking that you're gonna go on vacation, you can go to your local post office and request a hold on your mail. They can actually hold your mail until you return. So that's something I know a lot of people are not aware of, but that's something that you might want to check into. And so anytime that you order new checks, you want to make sure that the only time that they mail to your home, if you're not living in a post office box, you might want to just make sure to secure it and have it mailed to a mailbox, because if you mail it outside of your home, that's another opportunity for the thief. Now, keeping your personal information secure online, you want to make sure that you know who's getting your personal information. So it's not good, when someone calls to give your personal information out over the phone, through the internet, regardless, unless you can be able to identify who that person is. And another thing, when you're dealing with online, you don't want to click on emails. Sometimes people offer you different things through email. What you want to do, instead of doing the click, you might want to just go in and type that company name in there and put it in the web browser and see if you can go there and contact them. But instead of going through there, you might want to just check with their customer service, or even if there's a number that you can call to make sure that that person is legit. So these are just some of the things that you want to be aware of. And even when you get ready, if you have a computer, which most of us have computers, when you get ready to get rid of your computer and you have all that personal information on there, you want to make sure that all that information is wiped clean. Even if you have cell phones devices, you want to make sure that all that information is deleted. If there's some new information, make sure that information is transferred to your new device. I know sometimes when you're changing phones, like when I change cell phone, I go to the store and I make sure that they transfer. Not only do they transfer the numbers, but make sure they transfer everything. If you have a phone book within your cell phone, if you got a list of names, all that information, those messages, everything can be transferred into the new phone, including your photos. So you make sure that you ask for, when you're talking to the salesperson, that you make sure that you cover that information. Now, when we talk about passwords, we want to make sure that a lot of time we use simple password. We'll use, you know, our last name, our date of birth. Well, that's not always good, because most time these are not always strangers. Sometimes these are people that we know. So you want to make sure that you use passwords that are strong, especially when you're dealing with your banking information or your credit card. You want to just kind of be creative with your passwords. So don't use simple passwords. You know, usually I notice that a lot of times they use certain numbers, and you want to mix the numbers and the letters in there. So be creative with your password. Now, when you're securing your Social Security number, you want to make sure that you hold your Social Security number, that you ask first before giving your Social Security number. Social Security number is very important. You just don't want to give it to anybody. So you might want to ask some questions: why they need your Social Security number, what are they going to do with it, and even to the point of you have my Social Security now, so how are you going to protect it? But you want to make sure that you know what's going to happen with your Social Security number. Now, when you're keeping your devices secure, which means your computers and all that, you want to make sure that you install some type of antivirus software and a firewall as well. So you want this here is going back is when you're getting emails that you don't want to click on files and links that you don't know anything about, especially when they are from strangers. Usually, if you have to think twice about it, you probably wouldn't want to. So just be mindful of that. Anytime you're sending any type of personal information over the laptop or even with your phone, be very mindful. And another thing, a lot of us travel and we go to the airport. That is something you want to notice, especially if you're using your laptop and your smartphone in any public place. And most times when we're at the airport, we're in the coffee shop or even coffee shop, sometimes even in the library. You want to make sure that your information is protected. So you just kind of be mindful of, a lot of time I've noticed, you know, if you're in the airport, you'll see that other people they are using there. So you want to know how protected yours is. So even if you don't have to use it there, it might be good that if you don't. So another thing, you want to lock up your laptop. Any financial information that you have, especially is important information, you want to keep it on the lock and key. And when you're going into different websites, you want to make sure that you log all the way out. And a lot of time, especially when you're dealing with people, they'll tell you to make sure that you close all browsers. So make sure that you close that, and that is to protect your information. Next slide, please. Now, there's some identity theft protection services out there. What are identity theft protection services? You have the monitoring service, identity recovery services, identity theft insurance, alternate to commercial identity theft protection service, identity theft .gov offers free personal recovery plans. So these are some of the services that are out there. And next slide. What are identity theft protection services? These are many companies refer to their services identity theft protection service. No service can protect you from having your personal information stolen. Companies offer monitoring and recovery services. Monitoring service watches for signs that an identity theft may be using your personal information. So remember, can nobody stop the theft, but they can help you monitor your personal information. So keep that in mind. Next slide. And two of the services that they can offer, they have what they call credit monitoring, and also they have identity monitoring. And what creditor monitoring is, actually it tracks your activity, what's on your credit report. And it's gonna do with all three of the credit bureaus, which is whether it's Equifax, Experience, or TransUnion. What the identity monitor does is it alerts you when your personal information, like your bank account or your social security card, passport, driver's license, is being used in a way which it normally don't show up on your credit report. So if it's something different, they're gonna they monitor and they're gonna alert you about that. So these are two of the monitoring services which would is good, and you'll be able to use those. Next slide. Now you have the identity recovery services, which recover service. This is designed to help you regain control. And usually they have counselors and case managers out there to walk you through the process. And also sometimes they help you when you need to write a letter, but you can also go back to the letter that we referenced to yesterday about information on your credit report and you want to dispute it. They'll help you write letters to creditors to put, even place a freeze on your report, your credit report. So you see just from yesterday and today how this information actually overlaps with each other. So how it goes hand in hand with each other. Next slide, please. You have what we call the identity theft insurance, and which offer most of the major identity theft protection services. Generally, it covers out of the pocket expenses directly associated with reclaiming your identity. The expenses are limited. It might include some lost wages or a legal fee. So keep that in mind. That doesn't necessarily mean it will. And there might be a deduction as well as limitations. So you got a limitation exclusions on there. So just be mindful. But most policies don't pay if your loss is otherwise covered by your homeowner or your rental insurance. So if you have a homeowner and rental insurance, I would suggest that you would look there first. So next slide. Now what you want to do is minimize your risk from being a victim of identity theft. And these are some of the things that you can do. You can lost or stolen financial account. Close all your financial account like credit cards, bank cards. Make sure you place a passwords on all your new accounts. And remember, don't give anything simple, something that you feel that someone will not think of. Avoid using simple things, which I mentioned before in this situation, mother's maiden name, because if you notice most of the information, even when you have your credit cards, they ask usually your digits or your social security number or either on the account, in this case, your telephone number. So just be mindful, but these are some of the things that you can do to minimize the risk of being a victim of identity theft. Next slide. Okay, when there's a lost or stolen social security number, you can call this toll-free fraud number with the 3 consumers reporting companies, which can place an initial fraud alert on your credit report. And these are the numbers here, and yesterday, those numbers was given out. So anytime there is something that you don't feel comfortable, it's no cost to call and put that fraud alert on your credit report. You have lost or stolen driver's license or any other government identification. You want to make sure that you contact that agency, let them know that your information has been lost or stolen. You want to cancel any current card, driver's license. You can go to the driver's license place and get a replacement. And you can also put an alert on your file so no one else can get your documents and start stealing your identity. So immediately when you realize that something has been lost or stolen, or even when it comes down to your bank cards, you want to make sure you call it immediately. Next slide. And shredding your documents, you want to make sure that if you don't have a shredder, you can purchase one. Even if some people that don't have a shredder, just make sure that sometimes I'm at work, if I'm doing something, just tear them up in little bitty pieces, but make sure that the information, a lot of times what I do is, if I'm not around a shredder, I would take a black magic marker and go through both sides so they can't see that number through that paper. So that's just something that I do when a shred is not available. But you want to make sure that you shred all your documents, if they receipts, because you got to remember all these that's on your screen here, bank statements, all of them, they have your personal information and you want to protect your information. Next slide. Preventing credit card theft. To avoid credit card theft, you want to make sure that any new card that you have, that you sign immediately. Store them away safely because they the same as money. They carry only when you need them. Make sure, and I know people that does this often, do not write your PIN number on your card, because if you lose your card, they have everything they need. They have the card and they have the PIN as well if you place it on the back side. I was in the store the other day and a gentleman wanted to purchase something and he didn't have the card, but he told the lady he had the number, and she said no, that you had to have the card, which was a good thing for the store, because there could have been a possibility, not saying he was, but there could have been a possibility that someone might have stolen someone's information and was getting ready to use it. But that's something to think about. If you want to opt out anything receiving offers through the mail, you can do that. Next slide, please. There's a number right there. So if you want to opt out, you can use that number. Now you also can prevent thieves from your mail, which we mentioned, and I've gone over that. So next slide, please. But there is a number for the Postal Service. Make sure that you always file a report with the police department. And anytime you have a complaint, make sure that you report that to the Federal Trade Commission. Next slide. And here are some different letters that are available. If you see at identitytheft.gov/sample-letter, if you need to write some letters, there are samples there. They give you an idea. But the only thing I tell you, make sure that they will have sample letters, but make sure you put all the necessary information. Make sure everything is by certified mail. Next slide. These are some identity theft terms. This slide and the next slide. And on your package, what you get, the definition of these terms will be included in your package. I won't go over them, but when you're doing your teaching to the farmers, all those definitions will be on there. But these are just some of the terms when it relates to identity theft. Next slide, please. Next slide. So you see that it's a lot of them. These are the resources that I use for this presentation. Next slide. And this is my contact information. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Are there any questions that you guys have with regards to Carolyn's presentation on identity theft? I am monitoring the chat boxes. Oh, there's only one chat box. One of the questions that was asked, and I think this was a general topic for all presenters, are there examples that you can provide of survey instruments that we could use to get an idea of which of these great topics you shared are an utmost priority to farmers in our respective regions. Any of my
I would say,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would say all the topics are good. What we do in our trainings, we go through our trainings and how we go about selecting topics. We try to look at every aspect of a farmer's life, everything that plays a part in his life. And that's why these here topics, especially if they're going through the lenders. We know that they have to have credit. We know that in order for them to pass on down to the next generation, we know that they need to know about wills, estate planning, even with identity theft. That's why I brought in the beginning of how it played into the fold. So, but that we just something that we can share that information, our topics, but that's how we went about creating them.
And to add to Carolyn's point, what I shared in the chat box, but I only sent it to the individual, is that I spent some time interviewing folks in my state FSA office, finding out what some of the challenges that they experience and how we as extension educators could help them. So I did want to get some feedback from FSA officials, as well as we have something here called Ag Credit, and talking to them about some of the pitfalls that they see. And here in Georgia, and I don't think it's exclusive to our state, credit and lack of business plan were the most repetitive statements that I heard from my perspective in doing interviews. But I will say that Alcorn State has had a relationship. They actually have a cooperative agreement with FSA in providing this borrower training, and they've been doing it for over 20-something years. So please use Alcorn State as a resource. Mr. Reed is their Director of Special Projects. So any pitfalls or headaches that may have occurred, he would probably be able to educate you on that. With that being said, some of us may have a little Zoom fatigue. So we're gonna go ahead and take a 15-minute break. And when we come back from our 15-minute break, we are going to go right into our presentation on succession planning. So let's get up and stretch our legs, refresh our coffee, check some emails, and I'll see you back in about 15 minutes. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We are in the final stretch of our 3-day training. Let me check the chat box. Carolyn did put in the in the chat for everyone to see. We use our evaluation feedback from the participants for future topic considerations. So that's another valuable piece of information that you guys may want to also consider, that when you do the training for the first time or whenever you do it, that you allow your participants, your farmers, to give feedback on what other topics that they wish could have been covered during your training. With that being said and staying on schedule, I want to introduce you guys to another topic of succession planning, which will be done by Mr. Reed. That'll be about 30 minutes. So at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Reed and allow him to start his presentation. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Well, actually, it's Mr. McCarty this time.
Oh, you know, that's what happens when you have presenters with the same first names. So I apologize, Mr. McCarty.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right.
So the other Anthony is going to do the presentation.
There you go.
And I'm going to mute myself and take my seat.
Okay.
For you to present. Thank you, Mr. McCarty. And I'm sorry, Mr. Reed, about that.
There we go. All right. Again, my name is Anthony McCarty, not Reed, and I am the Extension Outreach Educator for Alcorn State University Extension Program, School of Agriculture and Applied Sciences. I'm going to talk about succession planning. And next slide. One more. All right. We talked earlier when we were talking about farm business plan, talking about history and knowing. Now, those aren't my folks, but sometimes you have to start at the history. You look at a farm and where it was in its earliest beginnings, and then you see where it is, you know, from, because we have a lot of farms been in their families for generations, right? They'll tell you, well, and with pride, and rightfully so. I'm a second, I'm a third, I'm a fourth generation farmer. And that farm came down the line. It came from their father's father to their father to them, and then hopefully they want to pass it on to their son one day or daughter one day. Okay, next slide. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so what's the goal? The goal today is to provide you as trainers with a general overview of the succession planning process, okay? And then also, we want to provide you with a basic understanding of what a succession plan is. And before we go to the next slide, let me just go ahead and address this right quick. Because you would think, you say, well, we just got through going over wills and estate planning. In succession planning, kind of, sort of, similar to that? And the answer is no. and I'll explain why. And before I go any further, I want to say to Ms. Banks and Mr. Reed, they had some tough topics this morning. I mean, it was rough. I mean, we talking about folks dying and leaving wills and cutting up, tearing up your bank statements because folks going through your trash and that. I mean, trust me, that's rough. And they do an excellent job of teaching, and that's a tough conversation. But as educators, that is a conversation that we'll have to have with our farmers, with our ranchers. Well, another one of those conversations, but not quite as challenging as those first two that I named, it's a succession planning. Okay, and you can go to the next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
And so the question is, what is farm succession planning? Now, I can approach this from an academic standpoint and just say, well, farm succession planning is the process of identifying and developing someone who can replace the current farm owner or operator when they leave, when they retire, when they die. Yes, that's true. But the difference between succession planning and, let's say, wills and estate planning, one would be, with succession planning, you are alive. With wills and estate, those are documents that are executed when you die. Two, estate planning passes on equipment, assets, let's say like the capital assets of the farm, land, the buildings, like I say, farm equipment, the livestock, those are, and I'm gonna call those things. Those are things that's being passed on from one person to another. But when you start talking about succession, you're talking about, I'm gonna use another word, I'm gonna bring another word into the conversation here. You're talking about a legacy. You're talking about legacy. That person is actually planning to transfer that legacy down the line to the next generation. And that's something they take very serious. When they talk about being that third or that fourth generation farmer, they're talking about their inheritance, something that was passed on to them. So the next difference then that I would say between estate and succession planning is you're actually passing on your legacy. You're making preparations, or not you, but you're assisting your farmers, to pass on their legacy to that next generation. Last we talked about the, once I got my notes here. Last time, we talked about the Cathy family. And this time I want to talk about a man named Sam Walton. Now, Can you hear me?
Yeah, you good.
Okay, I want to talk about Sam Walton. Now, Sam Walton was from Bentonville, Arkansas, okay? And he is the founder of Walmart. Now, when he started Walmart, he started out with a 5 and dime store and built it up to a series of retail stores. But that's what they were. Then when he died, he passed that on to his family. And now they took that and built it up to your Sam's Club and your super Walmarts, and they took it to a whole different level. So the difference between just, I would say, estate planning, where you're just passing off resources to another individual, succession planning is taking your vision, is taking your purpose, and you're passing that on to the next generation. And the difference is you can build, that's something that that next generation can build on. That's what they did with Walmart. He didn't just pass on tradition. And they say, well, I'm just gonna do it just like my daddy did. I'm gonna do it like his dad before him. And we're just gonna stick with that same tradition. That's not what succession planning is. Succession planning is you take, here, I got it to this point, you take over and you take it to the next level. And that's what we need to articulate and communicate with our farmers and our ranchers. So that when we sit down and talk to them about succession planning, this is not planning to die. It's taking your legacy and moving it on into that next generation. And we talked about legacy, but here's a definition. I want you to just take this down. And a legacy is basically a preservation of purpose. It's preserving your inheritance, preserving it. And the reason I call it purpose is because when farmers that farm, they know that that's their purpose. And you can tell because there's a passion in how they talk about it. No matter how frustrating it's been, no matter how many crops they've lost, no matter how, they're the most optimistic group of people because they found their purpose. They know what it is that they want to do. Someone else may not want to do that, but they have found their purpose. And while you can pass on buildings, land, and equipment with a will, you have to have a succession plan to pass on purpose, to pass on your legacy, because that involves bringing in someone that has your vision, that has your passion, that has that same desire. I'm reminded of when Samuel went and talked with Jesse and said, I'm trying to find the next king. And Saul was the king at the time. And he looked at all his sons. He had 8 sons. He looked at all 7. He said, you ain't got no more? He said, yeah, I got another one. He, where is he? He out there tending sheep. And I'm not going to go over the story. A lot of y'all already know it. And it was David. What am I saying? I'm saying David was anointed king while there was still a king. In other words, I need to find my successor while I'm still calling the shots. I don't wait until I'm down, I'm sick, I'm not able to make decisions, I'm incoherent, kind of like some of the stuff we talked about earlier. You know, I had a near-death experience, whatever it could be. No, because when I make decisions based on that, I'm basing my decision on a reaction. Okay, I'm reacting to something. The doctor told me I got cancer. I ain't gonna make, I got to find somebody. Or the doctor told me I got whatever. You're reacting to. But succession, you don't wait until something bad happens. Succession, you're making that decision now. While you're still growing the operation, you're already making decisions on who you're gonna pass it off to. And the only person that can know who's best to take over that operation is the person that currently farms that operation. And they're the ones that's where cross training comes in. That's where and we're going to talk about all of that. But see, when it should be a seamless transition, so that when that senior person steps off the scene, this other person has already been groomed, not being groomed, but has already been groomed for that position. And that's what succession planning is all about. Next slide. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 5 phases of succession planning, and that's by Lance Woodbury. We're going to also look at constructing a farm succession plan, and that was developed by Iowa State. And also what you need to know about farm succession planning by Farm Bureau. And my clock done went out on me. So let me know when I got about 5 minutes.
You got 14 minutes. Well, you got 19 minutes, so you're good.
We're good. All right. So next slide.
Okay.
So let's look at the phases of succession planning. And this is by Lance Woodbury. He's an advisor. He says at some point in your farm or ranching career, you begin to think about who will take over the business. You realize replacing yourself involves not just carrying on the tasks you perform every day, but also determining control over the very asset base that provide you your livelihood. And basically what he's saying here is this. You're talking about passing on, and I'm gonna use this word here, you're passing on authority. You're passing on power. The power to make decisions on how to run your farm. You're saying, I'm gonna relinquish that. Not you, but the farmer. And the farmer, that takes time, because nobody, me or you, nobody really wants to let go of authority. You know, my son, he says some things to, now I'm 61, I'm still young, I think, you know, but Daddy, you don't need to be doing that. And I'm like, what? Okay. So when that transition is there, the first thing Lance Woodbury talks about is, hit the next slide, is realization. I've got to accept the fact that at some point, I'm going to have to let go and turn this thing over to the next generation. And that's not the easiest thing to do. Sometimes it's triggered by positive events, and sometimes it's triggered by negative events. Sometimes it's a health crisis. Sometimes it could be an accident or an untimely death. Not necessarily the death of that particular farmer, but he may know of another farm and they've been good friends. They came up through the ranks together. They both tit for tat for the operation, and then all of a sudden he hears that, well, you know, he had a heart attack. What? No. Mm-hmm. And so now all of a sudden he begins to think about his own mortality. He begins to think, okay, so it's time for me to start. And when he comes to that point, Woodbury calls this realization. That's the realization. You may have some heirs that you just knew, well, I'm not worried about it. I got 3 boys. One of them surely will want to take over after me. Come to find out, the heirs choose not to return. And now you caught, because you had all your eggs in the fact that your heirs, you just knew they were going to want to take over. There could be a change in vocational interest, tension with the younger generation. You want to do it a certain kind of way, they try to tell you, no, I'm gonna do it this way. You tell them to go and perform a certain task, you come back and they've done it, but they didn't do it the way you asked them to do it. And so it creates tension, because there's a difference in how tasks are being approached now. Young people got a whole different way of looking at things than that older generation. And these are things that we as educators have to be mindful of when we're talking to our farmers and our ranchers about succession. So realization is one. phase 2 then would be, okay, next slide, onboarding. Well, what is onboarding? The next phase in succession involves the younger generation not being kept on the outside, but now being brought on the inside, being brought into a full-time working environment, brought into decision-making, brought into being given responsibility. They no longer being recognized on their farm as, oh, that's just Anthony McCarty's son, or that's just Anthony McCarty's daughter, niece, and nephew. No, now it's people in the community, because I take them to the bank with me when I'm doing my banking. I take them to the co-op with me when I'm making my purchases. I take them to wherever, because I want them to be actively engaged and involved. Why? Because I'm grooming them. I'm getting them ready. This is part of what Woodbury refers to as onboarding. Okay. Number 3, then,
I'm coming.
would be managing. Thank you. I'm sorry. Next slide. Would be managing. And the potential successor then moves from doing the work to managing others. And that may seem like that's a simple transition, but when you have individuals that's been working on the farm for years and years and years, and in the back of their mind, they may think they're the next heir apparent. Then here comes this little old kid that this cat used to ride on the tractor with me. I used to see him out there playing all in the dirt and stuff like that. And now he is being groomed to manage me, and that's part of the succession process. You have to bring that individual on in and allow them to start making management decisions over others while you're still there. Then if they come to you and say, or if they won't acknowledge the new authority that's been delegated to your son, your daughter, your whoever, and then you call, you have a problem with my decision? You have to facilitate that transition. Not you, but the farmer, because that's part of that motivation. Some can motivate by the carrot, some motivate by the stick, but you delegate that authority, not gradually. Now you don't give them all of it, but you gradually delegate certain authorities to that person that you are ultimately trying to groom, and allow them to make mistakes. That's part of the process. They aren't going to do things the way I want them. My son is not going to do things the way I want him to do them. Okay, and I've got to be patient. I've got to understand that, like I say, I can say the very thing that I need done, he'll hear it altogether different. Okay, and that's what a constructive feedback. I like what you did, but here's why I would have wanted to do it this way, and then you spell out the advantages of doing it the way that you asked it to be done versus the disadvantage, unless they may, because young people can teach us. They may have shown, if that new method is better, I've got to be man enough to swallow my pride and say, you know what, let's start doing it that way. Because if you open yourself up to young people, they can bring something to the table other than youthful exuberance, The next slide, please. And so then you go to phase 4. Woodbury calls phase 4 running. The retirement generation can now step further away, handing over significant control. It helps if they have something to draw energy or interest away from the business in order to give the younger generation the space to lead. Okay, in other words, there's no way that farmer is going to sit there and not want to, and he don't mean any harm, but he got to say something. Son, have you done this yet? And it may have been, it's on his thing to do list. He just hasn't done it yet. But what you do, or what I do, is I undermine my own child, the very authority that I gave my child, I undermined it. Okay, not intentional. So the best thing we do is find something to do to get out of his way. And here, new business venture, travel, a board service, mission work, retirement activities. I've got to find something, because there's no way I'm just gonna, and even if I go out on the phone and I don't say anything, he knows in the back of his mind, I'm standing there and he's questioning okay, if I make the decision, how is Anthony going to react to that? So my very presence, even though, well, what am I doing? I'm not doing it. I didn't say nothing. Your very presence there makes it harder for that young person to be able to make those kinds of decisions while you're standing there and he perceives it as you're looking over his shoulder. So get away from the farm. Go and find something else that you need to be doing. Okay, next phase 5 then would be ownership. Well, what's ownership? Farming and ranching business are capital intensive. It's a lot of resources that's out there. Yeah, like I said earlier, land. You got buildings. You got cattle might have fences. You got wells. You got grain bins. You got. I mean, it's all kinds of. So the ownership transition or the gifting of land and equipment, this sometimes takes years. It takes years. And here's what I say, what the farmer has to do is have a clear path of expectations for how the new generation will come to own the business. Succession involves weighty issues: morality, identity, money, there go that P word, power, and then of course relationships. Why relationships? I may have developed those relationships that I need with the bank. I may have developed those relationships that I need with John Deere. I may have developed those relationships. And so now when my son come in, they may not acknowledge him to that degree. It takes time for him to have that same kind of working relationships with the same people that I have working relationships. Or they'll still see him as no matter how much authority he's been granted by me to operate the farm, he's still gonna be seen as, that's Anthony McCarty's boy, that's Anthony McCarty's daughter, that's Anthony McCarty. He running, he helping his dad out there on the farm. No, he's not helping his dad. The farm is now his. He's being transitioned into ownership, and so those are things that Woodbury identified as 5 phases of it. But now what we want to do is look at the actual construction of a farm succession plan. So let's go to next slide, please. Constructing the farm, and how much time I got? I don't.
You got 7 minutes and 36 seconds.
We will not complete this, but that's okay. That's okay because you'll have all of this available to you in the slide presentation, the PowerPoint presentation. So that's okay. We still good. A succession plan can provide helpful guidance as individuals move into and out of the farm operation. Critical issues in succession planning includes: 1, planning for shifts in management from one generation to the next. 2, transitioning asset ownership from generation to generation. I never shall forget that there was a young man that came, and I wasn't in the state office, I was still working out in the field. A young man came to me and wanted to start farming on his own, and he had a good plan. It cash flowed the whole night. One small problem: he didn't have any equipment. And his father said he has access to all of the equipment that I own. Whatever he needs, he'd have access to it. And he gave it to me in writing. It wasn't just a handshake or a gentleman's agreement. We put it in writing. And it's like he's leasing equipment, but it was leased free. I mean, there was no cost in the business plan. And that probably had something to do with why we was able to get it feasible, make it cash flow. So what I'm saying is, part of succession is me being able to put my child in position to be successful. So if it may take me transitioning some of the things that I own over to him. I may have to let him use it that first year. Why? Because if I sold it to him and added that as an added debt to his farm business plan, the plan itself may not cash flow. But if I work with my own child, I'm leasing now the land. I'm there to help him with any kind of management decisions that he have to make. I'm grooming him. Why is it important for the child to start out maybe on something on his own? If I'm running 300, 400 head of cattle, I hit a bill, and he's just getting started. When he comes back, he'll have that experience because he's farmed on his own. And now when he moves into management on the larger farm, there won't be any questions about from the others that may work out there. Well, he just got this because his dad don't know. He earned it. He earned it because he went out on his own, proved that he could manage a farming operation for an entire production cycle, and he's back working with his father. And so that's part of that transition. I'm gonna try one more slide, see if I can get one more in.
You got 3 minutes, so you're all right.
Okay. So now, next we want to build the farm management team. This is a multi-generational operation. It's a multi-generational operation. That's a tongue twister too. Multi-generational operations only survive if the individuals involved in the successful are successful in building an internal management team. This typically involves stressing the idea of a team approach. And a lot of times you say, well, it's only the farmer. Who is the team? The team is what I said earlier. Taking him down there and introducing him to the manager out there at the local co-op. That's part of the team. If we're selling cattle, take them down into the sale barn, introducing them to the manager out there, take them to the FSA or to whoever, and gradually introduce him. And then over time, he'll start going in on his own without me and making transactions so that he begins to, but all that's part of that team approach. So I'm not just giving him the farm without the contacts that he's going to have in order to be successful. That's part of that whole team approach, focusing on developing management skills. Developing is key. Get him involved in training like what you guys are going to be offering in your areas. Get him involved in maybe taking some courses at the local colleges there. Get him involved in mentoring him under me if he's going to be working on my farm, or if he starts out with a small side operation, be there for him to provide him with the technical advice that he needs. Emphasize cross training. In other words, don't let him just work on, or she work on just one aspect of the farm, but introduce them to all of the farm. Developing a system of routine communication. And routine communication would generally be a term that we probably accustomed to is like a staff meeting. You know, being able to sit down around the dinner table in the evenings and discuss what's going on with the farm, where we are, where we're trying to go, and the strategies we want to implement to try to get us there. Implement routine and non-threatening evaluations of all team members. And the reason that's important is because you'd be surprised at workers that were very good working for me, but then when I leave, and I leave the person in charge, whether it's my son or whether it's my daughter, whether it's a cousin, a nephew, or uncle, whoever, then all of a sudden things don't seem to flow like they did or like they do when I'm around. And you need to make sure that farmers are aware that there has to be an evaluation process, accountability. Accountability is actually it's a good thing, but those that's being evaluated may not see it as that. And before I close, I want to thank each and every one of you guys. I hope that you got something out of my presentations, and my contact information is at the back. And I don't know if we can have time to scroll back there, but if you have any questions about how to contact me, you can reach me through Ms. Thomas or however. But
You said it's in here. Hold on, let me see if I can.
it's on the last slide back there. Yeah, you got to go all the way back there. I'm sorry.
There we go.
That's it right there. That's my email address. And if anyone of y'all want to reach out to me, you can do that. And I'll be available. And of course, I'm not going anywhere now. I'm available for questions today. But I'm saying in the future, if you guys want to get some type of program off the ground, I'm available. Just give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty, for your presentation. Always do a jam-up job. Wish we had a little bit more time so you could have finished the presentation. But this is a note to my future trainers and presenters that when you are working on your schedule, make sure that you have that good conversation with your presenter. How much time do you need? Because as you can see, all of our presenters are very passionate about the topics that they're presenting on. They're very knowledgeable and they can go long, and many of them can't go short. So make sure that when you're putting your program together, that you give each of your presenters enough time to present and also build in time for questions. So I'm monitoring the chat box, and I see that we have a representative from Alabama who has dropped some links in the chat box that you guys can view at your convenience. And Mr. McCarty, you got a shout out. Great presentation. Can hear the passion for teaching in your voice. All right, Mr. McCarty. And that came from SCF Organic Farms. So keeping us on track, our final, well, almost our second to last presentation for this afternoon is going to come from the other Anthony, Mr. Reed, and he's going to be presenting to you guys on savings and investment. So once again, I want to bring him back to the floor, and I will mute myself and turn the floor over to Mr. Reed. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Well, good evening again. I know we're getting late in the evening, and this topic is one that I guess it goes twofold. Goes a little bit into the prior succession planning, estate planning, wills, insurance, just a little bit of everything. But it all, I guess we'll focus on just a little bit, a different portion of it, is the ideal of savings and investing. And we know saving and investing is designed for one thing, getting to the point that you can retire and not work those long days and hours. You can sit on the porch and enjoy the nice breeze that come by in the morning time, because you don't have to get up early. You sit on the porch, drink some coffee or some hot tea, and just enjoy relaxing moments. But if I were in person with my farmers, I probably ask them to, either I would put a picture on the screen of a farmer that I knew was on the front porch, or with his family, or with his wife, or I would ask them to picture themselves sitting on the porch, about them had spending 30, 40, and 50 years with their particular farm enterprise. And they've actually have labored up all those years. They got to the point now that they're not able to put forth the amount of physical labor into the operation that they used to, and they have enjoyed it, but they know they're not at that ability anymore. Like Mr. McCarty mentioned before, he's 61, he's still pretty young. But some farmers of ours have got up to their 70s and 80s, and they still love and have that passion for farming, but they're just not able to do it. So, but when we start talking about saving and investing, we'll try to talk a little bit about those farmers who are not so seasoned, that they're trying to get to a point to put things in place so they will be able to retire and they will be able to live comfortably after those 40, 50 years of laboring on those farm enterprise. So we want to talk a little bit about some things that you might be able to do as a younger farmer, the things that you can do now while you are currently in the middle of your enterprise farming, some things you can do as early on as a farmer, and some things that while you're filing your income taxes, some things you need to be mindful of as relate to the Internal Revenue Service and how they deem farming enterprises. So of course, you know, we're all our partners. So we start talking about saving and investing. Again, it's not necessarily a comfortable topic for presenter as well as those who will be sitting through it. but we try to get them in the right mindset of preparing them to get to a point in their lives that they can sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labors, and try to get them to picture themselves getting to a point in life that they can sit on the porch and just glean from their life labors. But it requires some planning on their part. So they need to really see themselves. Where will I be at the point of my life when I feel like I can no longer farm? Where would I be financially? Have I set myself up to, I can live off the things that I set aside, the things that I have built, the money that I have invested, the money I put in savings, and so forth. They start thinking along those lines. Hopefully they have been making some plans. But if they have not, we can start talking a little bit about some possible things they actually could do to help them address their goals of being able to enjoy life, go visit the grandkids, if they have the opportunity to, or have the grandkids come over, take summer trips, him and the wife enjoy each other, take some cruises. But all those things require money. And in order for those things to be in place, they require some things to have taken place some time ago. So we look at the average age of men 65 today will live about 84.3 years according to the U.S. Department of Social Security. That's almost 20 years of retirement bliss or blunder after they have retired. But they talk about statistical say she said that a female will be 81.1 years of age, and that statistic basically is based on 2020's statistic that said a woman or individual born in 2020 will live 81.1 years from today. But the average household pretty much is like $60,000 per year, depending on what part of the country you're actually living in. So if $26,000 and $120 will come from Social Security, where does the rest come from? So if it requires you to live off of $60,000 per year, and Social Security only pays $120 of that amount of money out of that $60,000, where does the rest of that money come from for you to live off of? So this session will look at some of the tools and techniques for saving money and investing that may ease your retirement woes. Because again, we want you to feel like you can retire, get to the point that you have put things in place so that you will be able to retire. Because we don't want our last day on the earth being spent working every day unless it is a enjoyable hobby per se, not because you have to keep up your quality of life. So the word retirement to farmers, sometimes it may think that they seem like they're quitting or they're being put out to pasture, but that's not necessarily the case. It's just a place in life or a season that we all will get to that we're not able to function today as we did many, many years ago. We all know, look at the gentleman on the screen here, you see that his clothes, he actually been laboring that particular day, and that has a toll on the body day after day, month after month, year after year. He will not continue to be able to keep it up forever. So we want him to have labored, not in vain. All the labor that he actually have done will have prepared him for his retirement so he can enjoy the fruits of his labor. But some folks see it as an impossible thing when it comes to farming because they think that we really don't make ends meet that much. We just barely make enough to pay off our debt. We have a little bit left over for food and basic household necessity, but there's not a lot left over. But I think it really will come into play when you really sit down with a planner, financial planner, help you put your packs together to show you what you can and cannot do to help you get to the point in life that where you can comfortably retire. There's some things like a certificate of deposit you may know as a CD. The interest rate now are currently very low, but these still are pretty much a good, safe way to start savings. Most savings accounts allow you to withdraw as needed, but there could be a limit on the number of withdrawals that you can do pretty much throughout the period. CDs are pretty much a type of deposit that depends on the terms. Usually it offer a higher interest rate than traditional savings account though, but there are some drawbacks because you will be, interest rates are higher, but you still have less accessibility to the particular money because you don't want to draw it out until that CD has come to term. So if you do that, then you're going to be necessarily defeating the purpose of putting the money in the CDs. So when you start talking about looking at CDs, you want to make sure that it's money that you can actually contribute and don't need to use for a setting sector of time period. Because otherwise, you're going to be penalized for taking the money out before term is actually up. Generally, your CDs with a longer term will have a higher interest rate because the interest rates on CDs, they're usually expressed in a APY, which is your annual percentage yield. It's typically in a fixed rate, so it's not going to vary. So whatever you set it up with in the beginning, when you first buy your CD, that's going to be it when you actually end. But it is a safe way to save money. But again, though, you need to be mindful, though, that you will not be easily accessible to the particular money, and you need to set aside funds only that you can put to the side into a CD that you won't actually need for your living expenses. CD could be a great option too, but if you're looking at earning interest on excess of cash that you've actually set aside, because there are some CDs that will allow you to pay where it's like monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, even annually. So just depending on what your needs are. But I would suggest taking a look at CDs as an option for savings. Then there's also the IRAs, which is basically your individual retirement arrangements. Basically, they have three basic types. There's your traditional IRAs, there's your Roth IRAs, and there's also your rollover. We'll see on the next slide. But what it is, though, it's estimated you will need about 85% of your pre-retirement income to live off of. 85%. So again, you need to make sure where are we financially in terms of money we actually have coming in right now. All of our bills that we actually have to live off of right now, expenses and so forth, we need at least 85% of it to live after we have retired. So we need to start looking very carefully at where we are in terms of the bills that we actually have on our table for us. All those bills we actually have to have, or the bills we were created because we just something we actually wanted, or was it bills created because of something we actually need? So if it's something that we don't actually need, then maybe we need to start cleaning up those things off of our table in terms of table of expenses, so that when you do get to the point of retirement, you can easily be able to survive with 80% of the salary that you actually have coming in from your retirement, savings, and even Social Security. But IRAs can do a couple of things. One thing it do is supplement your current savings in your employer-sponsored retirement program. So sometimes some farmers that I know, they're not totally 100% farmers. They do work out the farm, and some farm wives work out the farm as well. So they may have an option to have employer-sponsored 401k plan. But first of all, traditional IRAs, you contribute money that you're able to deduct from your tax return. Any earnings that you could potentially grow tax deferred until you withdraw them in your retirement period. Then your Roth IRAs, basically, you make contribution with money you already have paid taxes on. So the money is already after taxes, and your money may potentially grow tax-free with tax-free withdrawal in retirement, and also provide certain conditions that must be met. And again, though, those components are gain potential wider range of investments. You can take chances of tax deferred or tax-free growth. And also with the rollover IRA, so what you're doing is you contribute money, which is basically rollover from a qualified retirement plan into your traditional IRAs rollover. Rollover involves moving eligible assets from an employer-sponsored plan, such as your 401k or your 403b, into a regular IRA. Now, some employers may be doing this and some may be not, but there's some pros and cons when it comes to your 401ks in terms of having access or not having access to those things. But things that you do is make sure, first of all, with your IRAs, with a bank, all the financial institution, life insurance company, mutual funds, stockbrokers, all these are pretty much our traditional Roth IRAs. With your tax benefits allow you savings on potential growth, helps you to compound them, and you can actually more quickly have access to those taxable accounts. Like me right now, I have a 401k that's coming out of my employer, and it comes off the top every month before I even get my paycheck. But then I also have a IRA that I contribute to, which is money that once I get my paycheck every month, then I have money sent to my IRA. That money is already taxed already. But the 401k is sent before they tax my paycheck, but the IRA is taxed after my paycheck has already been taxed. So I'm not being taxed on my IRA monies. So we talk about 401ks, and there's also something called the IRS Rule of 55. Quite a few farmers or their spouse, again, work off the farm. So you may have an option of getting a 401k from your employer. Usually when you have 401k from your employer, they do contribute a portion toward that 401k, just depending on what type of employer you actually have. But with a certain type of employee, there's also a maximum and a minimum that you actually can pay on your 401k pretty much on a regular basis. The maximum right now, I think, is about maybe $57,000 with your employer matching it. But then too, you're also going to save a little bit more once you get to be over the age of 50, because you want to be able to contribute as much as you can. Because again, though, it's not about right now. It's like you're sacrificing now, but when you get to a point of retirement, you'll have that money set aside to maybe live off of. Because again, you see, if your salary, every living salary is about $60,000, you're only going to get a certain percentage from your Social Security. So you want to be able to try and create as much as savings as you can, so make your retirement as comfortable as possible. So as a farmer, you may be also need to establish a solo 401k. And what a solo 401k is basically it's a retirement plan for self-employed individuals. What it does, you're able to pay more into it because you are self-employed. In order to qualify for this, you cannot have an employee working for you other than your spouse. You must contribute to your 401k. It must be recurring, and it must be a substantial amount. You can't just put like, $5, $10, $25 in there a month. It must be a substantial amount of money contributed to the solo account. And it must be reoccurring. You must have it set up to where you're paying on a regular basis, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or so forth. And you must contribute regularly on account to remain active. So if you don't contribute regularly, then the IRS will know about this. So then they're actually going to contribute it as a discontinued account automatically, because they are aware of this solo 401k plan. But your traditional 401ks, it lets you deduct the amount of your total employee contribution from your tax income. Basically, what you say, for instance, if you had you were making $50,000 a year, and you were contributing $5,000 to your 401k. So when you're filing your income taxes, pretty much, you're going to be taxed pretty much on $41,000, not the actual $50,000. And then in retirement, once you reach the retirement age of 59 and a half, pretty much, you're going to pay in taxes on what you withdraw based on your marginal tax rate at the time that you actually retire, not on when you'd actually done it earlier. But when it comes to your raw 401k, basically you're going to contribute much money, which is already paid taxes on, so you don't have to worry about that. But when it comes to retiring at 59 and a half, as long as you've been at least 5 years putting money into your 401k or your raw 401k, pretty much you can be able to get that money out without actually being penalized for it. So once you're 59 and a half, and it becomes tax-free, but only if you have been depositing money into that raw 401k for at least 5 years. Then too, it must be into that same time frame. You can't say if you were employed with another company 20 years ago and you were depositing money into your raw 401k, then you become 59 and a half. But then you actually start working at a different company and then you decide to start taking money out, but you haven't been there 5 years, then you will be penalized for it. So again, you must have 5 years consecutively with a current employer of contributing money that you will be able to get your monies out without actually being penalized for it. Then too, that Rule 55, what it does, it allows you to withdraw funds from your account after you have turned 55, but it allows you to take money out if you have lost your job, if you have been fired, or even if you actually have quit and not be penalized for it on your current 401k. So, but the rule, it's an IRS Rule 55. Again, you can withdraw money out if you have lost your job or been fired, even if you quit, and not be penalized for it. But it must be pretty much those basic criteria where you can draw out and not be penalized for it. Now, Social Security. Now, I know most of you guys, if I was in the class, I would ask you, take that Social Security card out your wallet or out your purse. I know most of us that carry those things around in our pocket at some time in our life. But we know we're talking about Social Security. We're talking about a point in our lives where we'll be able to draw funds from money that we actually have worked and contributed for at a certain age in our life. But it requires some certain things to be done when it comes to farming. Because some farmers, uh, how they do their money toward the Social Security is that we get what we call credits, and we get a credit every quarter. So every year you're pretty much going to get 4 credits for a year. But when it comes to farmers and pretty much they are self-employed, there's some restrictions when it comes to getting those credits. You have to have put in to get some form of Social Security. You have to have put in at least 40 credits to get some form of Social Security payments when you retire. Now, it requires you to be able to have put in a substantial amount of money to actually even qualify for that credit. For most farmers, you're going to be at least about maybe short that you actually have made a profit about $57,000. I'm sorry, $5,700 for that particular year to qualify to get those credits. Again, you will only get 4 credits per year, and you need to have at least 40 credits to be able to qualify for some form of Social Security. But even if you don't get the 40 credits, what if your wife has received 40 credits from her investment into the Social Security thing, then you would qualify for Social Security based on hers. But also too, even if you had been married prior to and your prior spouse had been paying into Social Security, but you must have been married to the individual for at least 10 years. A consecutive 10 years to report every place. So, and also too, when you start talking about Social Security cards, now you can only get so many of these cards during your lifetime, but you can get up to 3 for a year in terms of losing them and then getting a replacement. Your maximum you can get is actually 3 in that particular year, but the maximum you can get in terms of replacement Social Security card, there's a maximum of 10 that you can get over your lifetime. So when you start talking about carrying them around in your wallet or purse, they need to be kept someplace in a safe place at home, or the safe deposit box, or some other avenue where it's kept and not lost. Because again, once they're lost, you will not be able to replace them if you got no more than 10 in a lifetime. So family inheritance. One thing when we talk about family inheritance, there's another way of getting some, of course, wealth. But a lot of times we are set up to receive a inheritance at a certain age, but we already know we're going to get something, but we really don't know the exact amount that we're going to be receiving. So again, we know we're going to receive it, so we start spending because we know we're going to get this somewhere down the line. But a lot of times we've actually seen that some people have gone on and made these purchases and start living a life because they know they're going to replace this fund somewhere down the road from the inheritance, but they didn't read the fine print. Because when it comes to certain fees, when it's talking about transfer your inheritance, there's transfer fees, there's auction fees, and also some taxes on that money when it does being transferred to you. So we need to start looking at the fine print. Sometimes they say in those inheritance, you had some stipulation where you can't get it for a certain time frame. Then too, it may set it up to where you may get it once a year, or a couple of years. You may not get it all at one time frame, but you may have already gone out and start making purchases and start preparing to receive the inheritance, but it's designed for you to get at a later time period. I actually had a couple in one of my classes. They wanted to leave an inheritance to their children, but they made sure they would not be able to get it until they got to be age 62 themselves, because they wanted their kids to be able to live off their own labor for their lifetime, but they knew they wouldn't do well in terms of savings. So they decided to set up this money or inheritance for them to get when they got to be age 62, so they would have some money to live off of in their latter years. So again, you have that control over the inheritance, how you leave it. But be mindful though, if you are expecting something, make sure you know the stipulations that are set up from the people who are actually leaving it to you, so you'll know what you actually have coming in, so you'll know how to cover yourself accordingly. Because what we've seen people start to live beyond their means because they knew this inheritance was coming, but didn't know the stipulation that goes along with it. Now, as we get older too, sometimes it requires us to think about how we're going to actually live, in terms of being able to continue to manage the farm enterprise. Do we need to sell our land, or do we need to start transferring that land out of our names? Or sometimes it's just a part of our planning process for succession. All right, so we got to a point of our lives to getting older, we realize that we may not be able to continue farming the way we've had. You know, we may be a part of succession plan, how we're going to transfer the land from ourselves to our offspring, or we may not have offspring. We may decide we may need to sell this land, or we may decide we want to keep the land, like somebody mentioned earlier in the chat. They want to keep the land, but they want it to still, still stay in the family, but they want to be able to make some financial benefit from it. There are some programs out there through like USDA, NRCS, some called ACEP, which is Agriculture Conservation Easement Program, where if your land meets certain criteria that they will, pay you to let your land set idle, but the land is still yours, but it's set aside and still bringing in income, but you're not necessarily out there farming that land anymore. So you may want to look at things like that if you want the land to still stay in the family and still have control of it and still own it, but there's just a way to maintain the land and not losing it, especially if you spent many years of building up your land acreage. But also too, there's a way to, there's a lady too, one, she was basically a small farmer and she was also a retired educator. She got to the point of life of knowing she wasn't going to be able to farm much longer. She owned a farm, she had a farmhouse, she had cars, and she had a lot of other assets. What she started doing, she's like, well, I still want to have access to those things, but I'm not necessarily want to have them in my name. So what she started doing gradually over years is to start removing everything out of her name. She started with the farm itself. She started with all the equipment. Then she have the farmhouse taken out of her name, the land taken out of her name. So the only thing she has now in her name is basically some basic personal items she have inside the home. But everything has been transferred over to her children's name. But she still have access to it. She live in the house. She still live in the farm home, on the farm enterprise. It's still there. She's now what we considered a self-employed as a employee of the farm enterprise, but the farm enterprise is now in the name of her son, but she's still getting income from it because she's an employee of the farm, but she has nothing in her name because she knows at some time period, if you had to transfer it all at one time, it's going to be too much of a tax burden for her. So she just started doing it gradually over a time period. So there are some basic farm tax tips I want to share with you today. There's something called a Form 5884C. What it is that there's something called a work opportunity tax credit. And you would put this tax credit on this particular form. Is an IRS form 5884C. What it does, it allows you to employ veterans. If you employ veterans, you'll get some basic tax credit. So you'll be able to file this on a typical form where you do your income tax as a part of your farm taxes. But also not just veterans, but also if you want to employ ex-felons. Also, if you want to employ some of youth employees, you get some tax credit for your farm enterprise. You also want to employ your SNAP recipient, which is your Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. If you employ those individuals on your farm, you'll be able to get tax credit. Or if you want recipients that are receiving Supplemental Security Income or SSI, you'll get some tax credit. You'll still use the same IRS form, 5884C. Then there's somebody who's qualified for long-term unemployed recipients. They'll also give you a tax break for that as well. And even you do some vocational rehabilitation referral program on your farm enterprise, you'll also get tax credit for your farm business. So just another way to kind of save money when you're filing your income taxes too as well. Then I always say, seek tax professional help. Because again, though, the laws keep changing pretty rapidly. So again, these people, that's their job on a regular basis is to do tax preparation. So again, these people will automatically stay abreast of all of the changing tax laws that are current and past as well as future. Because if you go to one now, they're able to go back a couple number of years to go back and look at your tax return and see if you got all of the tax break that you actually qualify for. So I would say always use the tax professional to help you put your tax together. They will know all of the tax breaks, the shortfalls, the headaches that you can actually avoid to have a successful tax preparation. I was speaking to a lady this morning. She has to have a farm business. She meets with her tax person every quarter to see if she's on point for retirement. If there's some things she needs to do in terms of, contributing to a nonprofit, or if she needs to do better with her farm enterprise, she needs to do better with her savings and so forth. But what it does is allow her to stay on point throughout the year to help her meet her goal between her and her tax person. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not sure about meeting every quarter, but whatever it takes for you to be successful in terms of keeping on task with your goals so that you will be able to retire and meet your personal goal as well as your professional goal, definitely seek out the help. If it's quarterly or half a year or once a year, definitely do whatever it needs to take so you can be able to reap those benefits. Then too, when it comes to IRS, they do have some criteria that depicts whether you are farming or you just have some farm activities or you just have a hobby. That's the third thing you must abide by. So basically, if you're in a business of farming, if you cultivate, operate, or even manage a farm for profit, either as an owner or a tenant, basically you're considered a farmer. Then your farm activities would be, if your primary purpose is for income purposes or to make a profit, or two, if you're involved in activities that are continuously and has some regularity, then you have met the basic criteria for a farmer. So basically there are some IRS use to determine if you are a farmer or not. So these activities could be like packing, grading, handling, or any other agricultural commodity in its unmatched state. But only if the owner or operator of the farm regularly lose more than half of that particular commodity. So again, you need to look at these things are considered activities which are allowable, which are packing, grading, handling of any type of agricultural commodity in its unmanufactured state. But only if these things are done, if you've done it regularly, then if you're also doing it if half of the commodities for making those particular items. So again, you need to look very closely at what's considered activities, what's considered actually approval by the IRS, what makes you an actual farmer or as a hobby farmer. Because you'll end up as a farmer, you'll know there's a couple of forms you need to complete as a for your IRS, such as your Schedule F or your Schedule C. Basically, your Schedule F pretty much where you're going to be putting your farm income and expenses. And then to your Schedule C, where you'll be putting your profit or loss from your business. Now, you could be doing both forms depending on how your farm is actually set up. But again, it's between you and your tax preparer to know exactly what you can qualify for your Schedule C and what you qualify for your Schedule F. Again, your Schedule F is for income and expenses, and for your Schedule C for profit or loss from your business. So when a farmer processes, basically when you're processing your crops, that's secondary to harvesting. Even when you're growing, it's considered a farming activity. Anything that's associated with costs or reported on your IRS Schedule F. But in terms of contrast, in terms of commodity beyond that, that's considered an activity. And that is so where you put your profit or loss, that will go on your Schedule C with your Form 1040. Okay. All right. So we start talking about qualifying for some exemptions when we are doing our income taxes. There's some called barter income, tax exempt, and property for services. So we say barter income. What it is basically when you actually have paid your worker with a farm product or property, instead of giving them a salary or income, you give them a piece of item or a farm product. But you also must file that on your income tax, and you must use the actual market value for that particular product. You can't just give it to them instead of salary and that be it. So if you're receiving or paying somebody with a barter income, you must file the income tax, and you're going to use the current market value for that particular product. It also comes called like tax exempt, basically. When you hire an eligible unemployed veteran, again, you can claim this on your Form 5884C. It allows you to get a tax exemption on your income tax. Again, you can not only just do veterans, you could do SNAP recipients, you could do ex-felons and so forth. This is an easy way. If you're gonna have to hire help, look at these different types of individuals to hire, and also you get the help you need, but you also get a tax break benefit too as well. For example, say if you had a barn income, say if you had like a neighbor who built a barn, and then you had you received cows for the work that you actually did to build this barn. So in order for you to be able to record this on your income tax, you have to be able to show the value of those cows at the current market value to show that this is actually income that you got from doing actual work or building the barn. Then there's also something called property for services. So it's pretty much the same thing. If you're going to transfer property to an employee as payment for services, pretty much it's the same exact thing. You're going to have to show that the wages that you actually pay the person, which will use the current fair market value of that property, it will be used as income for an individual. So you still will have to file that, but you would be filing it under the current market value of that piece of property. Then there's we talk about savings. We need to look at how we depreciate our equipment. Depreciation is pretty much like it's an annual thing that you actually do to get some basic tax deduction. Basically, the IRS requires the taxpayer to recover the cost on a basis of certain property tax over a set time frame. So, but when you're figuring your depreciation, you need to consider the wear and tear, deterioration on the property, even in terms of what impact the weather has on those particular entities. And then too, does that particular piece of property become obsolete? All these are very good tools to use when you talk about savings in terms of doing your income taxes. But there's a rule that IRS have changed, I think it was October 2018, but they changed the Tax Cut and Job Acts and changed in terms of how farmers and ranchers depreciate their business property. There's some called a 150% decline in balance rule, which is like a one-liner rule that you can use to show depreciation. It's not necessarily a FSA rule in terms of how they appreciate their equipment, their guideline, but it's a rule that some lenders use in terms of how they depreciate it. Basically, what you'll be doing is just taking a 150 rule, is they use about 150% reduction balance. What you do, you multiply that particular 150 times the number of years that you will actually say that this particular equipment will actually last, or they assume that it will last. Then you actually multiply that times the value of that piece of equipment. They will tell you the amount that you will actually depreciate that equipment for that particular year. So again, 150 rule is 150 type of number of years that that particular piece of property is scheduled to depreciate, or you think will last. If it lasts 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years piece of equipment, then you multiply that times the value of the equipment. So it will be, say for instance, like 150 times 20 years times $400,000 piece of equipment. That'll show you how much you'll be able to depreciate for that particular year. And you'll do that for each year. And that will be times when it's actually, when you actually start the depreciation process. It was on the 9th month out of 12 months. It'll be the 150 times the 20 times the 400 times the 9 divided by 12. They'll give you a percentage for that particular year. And you do it for year 1, do the same for year 2, set up for year 1 be 9, 9, 12. Second year will be 12, 12, 12, 12 for the third year, 12, 12 the fourth year. And it pretty much go all the way up to about your 5-year cycle for depreciation of that piece of equipment. One thing too, a good thing to do in terms of savings and is knowing where you are with your farm business. And I was just doing a basic farm business analysis every year. I know we talked early on about your farm business plan, but this is something you need to do throughout the year to see where you are financially. Basically, you're analyzing your current position with your farm enterprise. What it does is allow you to see, are you really on task with meeting your goals for that particular year? Because again, one of the problems we've actually seen is that, say for instance, you're a cow-calf operator, people take calves to the sale and sell the calf, and he asked them, basically how much the calf brought. They said, well, it brought like $800. But is that really a profit, or is it just what the calf actually brought? Because what they failed to do when they started calculating all the input costs of that particular animal, they fail to include certain things in that particular price of the animal. Say for instance, if you're going to have a calf, what should be included in the calf price will be the cost of the grass you put out for seeds we put out for grass, fertilizer, lime. If you put up fencing, all those should be calculated with the number of animals head that you actually have. And then you divide that by the number of head by the amount of money you actually spend. That'll tell you the amount that that particular animal should have brought. So that way you actually truly know if you actually made a profit for that particular animal. But again, if you don't analyze your current position in terms of your input costs, you really won't know if you actually make a profit per head of animal, not just with animals, but in terms of what we're doing, sweet potato, you're doing sheep or goats or any other enterprise. You need to be analyzed to see what your current situation is. Because again, it keep you on track. So then at the end of the year, you go back and look at your whole year's operation. You see if you actually met your goals. But then you can compare year 1 to year 2 to see if there's something you can do differently in year 2 in terms of cutting back on your costs. Maybe if you did an appropriate job with getting a soil test, then maybe you didn't need to put out lime the second year. Or if you did well with analyzing and putting out fertilizer the first year, you may not need to do it in second year. Because again, it all comes from analyzing your current situation will help you save money. So a good soil test could actually save you from spending money you don't actually need to be spending. Self-employment expense. So, or self-employment income, I'm sorry. One thing we need to be mindful though, is that the self-employment income, us being farmers, we're kind of like entrepreneurs. So we must exactly participate in our enterprise in order to be able to file for self-employment income, would mean that we're actively involved as a farmer. I mean, not that we are giving, somebody else is running an enterprise for us. We as an individual must be actively involved. So this is basically any income other than salary or wages is earned income. Therefore, a person operating a farm or ranch that they own or rent must pay self-employment tax on the profit. So we must be actively involved in order to get the self-employment income. So there's any income and expense is reported on your Schedule F, profit or loss from your farming. Your cash rent landowner is not liable for your SE taxes on the rent and report the rent on your Schedule E, which is basically your supplemental income and your loss form. So again, for your SE, you must be actively participating in your farming enterprise. So typically, if you're doing like share crops or you're a landowner if you don't owe SE tax, unless you are maternally participating in the day-to-day operation of the business, you don't do the SE income tax. But again, you have to be actively participating in that in order to qualify for self-employment income. So non-deductible expenses. Quite often we think that most expenses on the farm are deductible, but that's not necessarily really the case. There are some things that are deductible, there are some things that are not, like groceries, clothing, home repairs, pet food, etc. But expenses for employees are not basically expenses, but we start talking about things like your employee uniforms, housing, repairs, etc. Those things are somewhat deductible. But the things that are not, like your groceries, clothing, repairs, are not necessarily deductible expenses. Now, when you have principal paid back on a loan, is not deductible, but the interest paid on that business loan is deductible, but not the actual principal itself. So again, if you're paying interest on a loan you actually have, that is the deductible, but the principal itself that you're actually paying, that amount is not deductible on your income taxes. Some other deductible expenses would be if your expenses, the cost of raising livestock on your farm. Now, when an animal dies, basically you cannot claim that loss as a business expense because you've already got deductible debt for raising the animal. So if you receive insurance payment for the unforeseen sudden death of an animal, you may use it as a gain to actually report on your income taxes. So again, if you actually have used this raising animal you have a deductible cost for that, but then you actually lost it, you cannot claim that as income. But if you because you get paid for it, but if you actually lose it, you will actually be able to claim it as a part of your income. So then for If the farm suffered a loss of a crop, the loss cannot be deducted since the cost of raising the crop will be deducted as a business expense. So again, the animal can't, because you've already claimed it, use a raising the animal, and your crop is pretty much the same thing because you also deduct it as a business expense to get your crops in and out of the ground. Some other deductible expense, car and truck, chemicals, conservation expenses, custom hire, depreciation, employee benefit program, gas, fuel, insurance, interest, labor, pension, rent, repairs, fertilizer, lime. All these are items that you are considered deductible expenses. But we start looking at personal things, such as your groceries and things, feeding the animals, which is your personal animal like dog, cats, and things of that nature. Those are not considered deductible expenses. But anything that deals with the operation part of your farm enterprise can be used as deductible expenses and should be deemed so by the IRS on your Schedule F form on your profit and loss statements. Paid farm expenses. Again, farmers can pay for feed, supply, fertilizer, and other input from 1 year to the next. What it does is allow you, say for instance, if you were a farmer and you got a chance to purchase a tractor this year because you knew that the interest rate was going to go up next year. So you're able to go ahead and purchase the tractor in the previous year, and then it actually be counted against you in the second year by the IRS. Because especially if you're trying to do it to save money, or because it may not be available next year, or it may just be so much more expensive for you if you decide to wait till next year to get this particular piece of equipment. You will go ahead and get it in the previous year, but then the IRS is not going to charge you against you until the year that they actually put into the operation. Because sometimes it's to our benefit to buy things at a lot early on because of the price is just right, or because of its availability, because then it may not be available next year, especially if you're going to buy it at a discounted rate. So the IRS pretty much is not going to deduct the cost of the purchase until the year that you actually put it in operation. So prepaid farm supply continue. The expenses must be a payment for the purchase of supplies, not necessarily a deposit. So pretty much if you consider paying payments there and buying a commitment, must be a acceptable delivery of a specific quantity or even at a fixed price, then you can consider it as a prepaid farm supply expense. But again, though, if it has to be considered a payment, you have to have a binding commitment. It has to be something that you accept the delivery of and for a specific quantity and at a fixed price, then you can see it as being a prepaid farm supply expense. But if it's something that's not there, then it won't be considered a prepaid expense unless you meet those basic criteria. Like if it's a refund or repurchase or no entitlement to that particular entity, then you won't get those credit for it. Now, the prepayment has to be specific business purpose and is not merely to avoid taxes. Basically, an example of that would be if you have a business benefit including fixing maximum pricing, securing unsure supplies, or even securing a preferential treatment for anticipated shortage, something of that nature, then it would qualify for a prepaid expense. Otherwise, it would not. But it has basic criteria. It would be okay. But if we don't meet those criteria, then it would not be. And also, the deduction does not materially distort your income. So even with 1 or 2, it should not distort your income when you file your income taxes on this Schedule F. And there was a survey actually done with about 500 farmers. And they asked these farmers pretty much, what are some top 10 things you would think of when you talk about saving money? So these are some of the things that I actually come up with. And this is the percentage based out of 500 farmers are being asked. So the first one, reduce farm equipment purchases. This is say about 67% of the 500. So the first thing you should do is reduce all your farm equipment expenses. A lot of times as farmers, we tend to buy equipment that we don't necessarily really need to have. So easiest way to do is only buy equipment that you actually need to have for your current farm enterprise. Then if you don't necessarily need to have it, maybe you look at trying to sell that piece of equipment to another farmer who could actually use it. And it will help to alleviate you with some of your equipment expenses. Because if you don't sell it and you're not using it, you still have to maintain it, have to make sure that it's actually being serviced, that it's not just sitting there in the yard depreciating. Because that's exactly what it's going to be doing if you're not having it in the operation. Number 2 says delayed non-equipment capital purchases. 46% basically agree with that. Third, it says employ no-till or low-till farming practices. 42% out of 500 stated that. Number 4, purchase less treated seeds to reduce seed costs. Of course, when you buy treated seeds, it will cost a little bit more, but it just depends on where you are financially, because again, though, it may help you alleviate some insects or some viruses that you may find in your farm. Sometimes it's best to buy pre-treated seeds, but if you're looking at trying to cut costs, then maybe just buy regular seeds instead of pre-treated seeds to cut back on some of those expenses. Also, you may look at negotiating lower land rent with landlord, especially if you've been renting land for such a long time period, you've been paying on time, and you've got a chance to have a good relationship with the landowner. Maybe they may be willing to cut back on what you're paying on rent. You never know. All they can do is say yes or no. 26% says that out of the 500. Number 6 is that increase variable rate application for fertilizer and crop protection input. Again, if you really don't know, unless you have done a soil test and know exactly what you need to put out there as related to fertilizer or any type of crop inputs, to know exactly what you need, because you don't want to put it out there if it's something that actually you don't need, so you can save money through that way also. Then you want to look at reducing energy consumption through better equipment maintenance and or power generation. A lot of times we're buying new equipment, but we really don't know how to maintain it. So maybe it may require us to take a mechanic class, so we'll be able to know how to maintain our own equipment, do the basic oil change, tire replacement or tire repairs on the farm, instead of taking it into a service place. So again, it's just another way of trying to reduce some of your expenses. Then too, I know we have FSA come behind me, but we need to make sure we do understand the right position to approach the lender. And I think they're going to go into a little bit in terms of what they require in terms of getting loan through FSA. But I would say one last thing though here is that when you're looking at approaching a lender, you need to be asked the basic question, whether it's FSA or anybody else. The first thing you need to know or be able to answer is, how much money do I actually need? Are you asking for money just for operating? Or you need money to buy land? Or you trying to buy land and for operating, and then you want to get a couple extra dollars for your home? Whatever it is you're getting money for, you need to be very mindful of what you're asking and be able to justify what you actually need that money for. Then to, why do I need that particular amount of money? You have to be able to show the lender why you need the money and what it's going to be designed for. Then the next thing is that, why do you have to have it? Are you not in a financial position to be able to use your own income money you actually have set aside? We talked before though, the young lady, Ms. Coleman, said she actually depleted her retirement to start her farm enterprise. Every farmer, it's not necessary to do that, but again, that alleviated her from having to go to the bank to get funds that she may feel that she was not in a financial position to be able to pay it back. But all depends on what you're trying to do, what's your current goal. So you need to be very clear when you sit down with a lender, what it is you want to do, how you plan to do it, how much you actually need, and then to how do you plan to pay it back. Because regardless of what it's FSA or anybody else, if they loan you money, which means they do want you to be able to pay it back. And you have to show them how you're going to be able to pay that money back and still be able to live off of what your farm enterprise is actually involved in. I'll stop there and I'll let the last few slides go. I think the FSA is going to cover those in terms of the right position that you need to be in when you start getting funding from a lender. And again, though, information in this session is designed to provide information only, not to replace the advice or direct from a certified financial advisor, because again, though, those individuals will be more qualified in terms of pointing in the right direction to help you put together a plan to help you to meet your financial obligations. Then you actually have a person who's specialized in doing income taxes, who you can talk to specifically about what things you have in terms of profit and losses and those tax breaks that you can get from your Schedule F and Schedule C when you file your 1040 form at the end of the year. Thank
Thank you so much, Mr. Reed. That was very good information. I don't think I could have done it, but you did a phenomenal job. The content was very much on point. So I appreciate the time and consideration you put into making this presentation virtual for the benefit of this audience. With that being said, we have literally 3 minutes of wiggle room. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask Mr. Reed with regards to his presentations on savings, investment, and retirement? And I am monitoring the chat box as always. But I will also say while I'm monitoring, did somebody unmute?
Well, it's me. I see a question in the chat box from Vanessa. Her question basically is, which is better, the IRA or the CDs? And again, when I start talking about things of nature, I leave it up to your financial advisor. But for me, I will look at all the pros and cons for the IRA and the pros and cons for CDs, because we know CDs pretty much are termed. And a lot of times we got to make sure you have enough money to set aside for those CDs, and then too, that rate of interest, it will not vary. It will be a set fee for that particular time frame. And if you have to pull from that CD within that time frame, you're going to actually be penalized for it. Now, in terms of the IRAs, that pretty much is money that you're going to be already pretty much taxed on prior to, so you won't be taxed later on for that. And then too, with IRAs, once you reach that age of 59 and a half, if you actually have contributed into it for that 5-year time frame in that IRA, you will not be penalized for it as well. So I would just look at trying to find all the pros and cons of each one of those and make a decision yourself and get that advice from a financial advisor in terms of the IRA or the CD. But they both are some good things to have. But your CD is a simple way to get essential a savings account, pretty much a little bit better than your savings account itself. But you will make sure your money that you can set it aside and not need it for a window of time.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, for addressing Vanessa's question. I had sent her a very simple response privately. Lori just popped in a message. It says, it's interesting that none of the savings measures touch on labor cost.
Because again, though, it's labor costs fluctuate so greatly because, again, small farmers, they're utilizing labor from family members. So you're not necessarily calculating it all into your farming price. You should calculate some of it, but some of it you are just getting because it's actually part-time. That's why I mentioned about the benefits of the 5884C form, where you can actually hire labor on your farm, whether it's a veteran or a ex-felon or SNAP recipient and so forth, where you get those additional tax benefits from hiring them into your farm enterprise. But usually your small farmers, very little will you be spent on labor because you're pretty much doing most of the work yourself. You're not necessarily in a position to do a lot for hiring labor.
Okay. So I don't see any other questions. I see that Mr. Brooks and Mr. Boley are both logged in. Mr. Brooks, holler at me if you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. I have to plug my FSA Georgia representative. I love my relationship with my FSA person. They never let me down. So I challenge all of you today to find out who your FSA farm loan contact is and tell them how much you appreciate them. You don't have to do it on Zoom. Pick up the phone, find their email, because when you're doing presentations like this, you want to make sure that you can call him or her and say, I need you, and they pull through. So when I say, Mr. Brooks, are you ready? And he says, I'm ready, that's the kind of connection each of y'all need to have with your FSA person. Terrick, are you on the line?
But George, can I make this quick comment before you get started?
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one thing too, what has happened at Mississippi, FSA has started bringing Alcorn in as well as other CBOs to help train us on their application and the application processes. So maybe also reach out to FSA too within your state, because they will be willing to bring you in, so you'll be a lot more knowledgeable about the loan application process. So when you talk to your farmers, you'll be in a better position to advise them or to get them technical assistance to put that package together.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Well, Mr. Brooks, I have gotten your slide pulled up. So I'm going to go ahead and let you address the eligibility requirements for your farm loan programs. So the floor is all yours.
All righty. Well, that was a perfect segue into my introduction. The first thing I was going to say is I encourage all of you to develop a relationship with your FSA personnel, both on the farm loan side as well as the program side. Those employees are going to be instrumental in helping you get what you need and all the resources that FSA can provide to make sure that you have a sound farm business plan for your constituents and all the information that you need moving forward. With that being said, I'll jump right in. I know it's the end of the day and everybody's ready to wrap up after 3 days of great presentations. The first general eligibility requirement we have here is controlled substances. And a lot of you all may not think that this comes into play, but I'll give you a personal example. I was a loan officer down in our Moten office several years ago, and an applicant came in from my hometown. And I knew him, and I knew that he had been incarcerated for drug offenses. And I didn't know the exact details of it, but it was the first time where I actually had to request a criminal background check for an applicant. It was a first, but it was definitely needed. And I'm going to be reading a lot directly from my handbook, and these are the eligibility requirements. So when it comes to controlled substances, any person convicted under federal or state law of planting, cultivating, growing, producing, harvesting, or storing a controlled substance in any crop year shall be ineligible for any payment made under any act with respect to any commodity produced during the crop year of conviction in the 4 succeeding crop years by such person. That definition right there, if you're convicted of any of those offenses, you will be ineligible to receive a farm loan for that current year in the 4 succeeding years of that conviction. Now, fortunately, in the case of the gentleman that I just spoke of, he was convicted of possession of a controlled substance. And if you're convicted of a possession or trafficking of a controlled substance, that does not apply to that eligibility requirement right there regarding controlled substances. Next, we have legal capacity. Excuse me. The applicant must be of legal age, mental capacity, and have authority to enter into a legally binding agreement. And if this applicant is an entity, all members of the entity must meet this requirement. So that's pretty straightforward there. You got to be, so if I'm not mistaken, most places you got to be 18 years old in order to enter in some type of legal agreement, with the exception of course, our FSA youth loans, where the student does have to get the permission and consent of the parent or the guardian in order to enter in a loan agreement with us for the youth loan. Next, we have the citizenship requirement. The applicant and anyone who will sign a promissory note must be a citizen of the United States, non-citizen national, or a qualified alien under applicable federal immigration laws. So again, pretty straightforward there. Now the next one, credit history. I think we talked earlier about this, about some of the pitfalls and barriers to receiving assistance from FSA from a loan standpoint. Credit is very important, and the applicant must have an acceptable credit history demonstrated by repayment. So again, we do not make a credit decision, a loan decision based on a credit score, but we do pull your credit report and we'll look at your past 36 months credit history. And that credit history must be deemed acceptable by the local loan approval official. And that is a subjective criteria. I've seen cases where a credit report was pulled and a couple of late payments here or there. Some loan officers may consider that acceptable. Other loan officers may not consider it acceptable. But one thing that we do whenever an eligibility decision is declined based on credit, we will sit down with the applicant, go over the credit report, address the issues, and see if there's any way that we can reconcile the problems that we have with the credit report. And also, as a part of the credit history, the agency will determine whether the applicant will carry out the terms and conditions of the loan and deal with the agency in good faith. In making this determination, the agency may examine whether the applicant has properly fulfilled its obligations to other parties, including other agencies of the federal government. So now, when that comes into play, let's say NRCS EQIP payment, or being enrolled in the EQIP program with NRCS. Now, of course, this will not show in your credit report, but I just had a case last week where a guy called me and he received a letter from NRCS. He had to repay some money. And he had to repay money because he was given an advance payment on some practices and he did not install all of those practices. So something like that, which of course, as I stated, will not be on the credit report, but will also be taken into consideration and determine whether or not you have an acceptable credit history. Next, we have a credit elsewhere. So years past, it was a common refrain that in order to be eligible for a FSA farm loan, that you had to have a turn down letter. That requirement was changed several years ago. So now when you sign the application, which is a FSA form 2001, you self-certify that you're unable to receive credit elsewhere. And that is very important because, again, it's subjective. You know, once we pull that credit report and we look at your credit history and we have information on your income, whether or not you have non-farm income, or look at your balance sheet and see what type of debt to asset ratio you have or any type of equity you have in operation, it may be determined that that loan approval official feels that you may be able to get credit elsewhere. And in a case like that, they may require you to go get a turn down letter from a bank or a lending institution stating that you're unable to receive credit from some of these other institutions. So although you self-certify when you sign the application that you cannot receive credit elsewhere, that is not the end of that requirement. So once the application has been deemed complete, and again, we look at credit history, we look at your financial statements, balance sheets, things of that nature. If that loan approval official feels that the applicant could possibly receive credit from an outside source, then you may be required to submit a turn down letter from additional lender. Delinquency on federal debt and unpaid federal judgments. So, like I talked about it in my presentation on Tuesday, any outstanding federal tax lien, tax judgment will automatically exclude you from being eligible for FSA farm loans, with the exception of a income-related tax debt. So, handbook states, the applicant and anyone who will sign a promissory note must not be in delinquent status on any federal debt other than a debt under the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 at the time of closing. Applicant must not be delinquent on any non-tax federal debt. So if you have a current debt obligation due to income taxes with the IRS, we would not consider that to be an exclusion to meet this eligibility requirement. Next, we have the federal crop insurance violations. Handbook states that a person who willfully and intentionally provides any false or inaccurate information to the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation or to an approved insurance provider with respect to a policy or plan of the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation insurance after notice and opportunity for a hearing on the record will be subject to one or more sanctions that may change the applicant's eligibility for all federal assistance. So again, any type of federal crop insurance violations may exclude you from being eligible for FSA farm loans. So keep that in mind. And also, going back to my personal experience as a loan officer, that also can go back to acting in good faith. So if an applicant has been proven to have lied intentionally or willfully to a federal crop insurance agent or someone who represents the agency, that may be considered as not acting in good faith. Another thing to take into consideration. Next, managerial ability, which is very important. And again, maybe one of those subjective categories, but the applicant must demonstrate managerial ability by satisfying any combination of education, on-the-job training, or farming experience. So for education, for example, the applicant may have obtained a 4-year college degree in agriculture business, horticulture, animal science, agronomy, or other agriculture-related fields. In order to meet this managerial requirement through education alone, the applicant must have completed or is completing an educational program in agriculture. And it's not just limited to a 4-year college degree, but it may be a 2-year degree from a technical college, or maybe successful completion of farm management curriculum that may be offered by a cooperative extension service, a community college, an adult vocational agriculture program, or a land-grant university. On-the-job training. To meet the managerial requirement through on-the-job training alone, the applicant must be currently working or has recently worked as hired farm labor with management responsibilities. Keyword, management responsibilities. And a lot of times when I give presentations, I state that, you know, a lot of people want to be farmers, but a lot of these wannabe farmers should just be dedicated tractor drivers who are told what to do and get a paycheck every week, because management is a very important part of being a farmer or rancher. And you got to be able to make management decisions. So you can't just show up at 7:30 in the morning and the owner of the farm tell you to go spray the back 40 or to go plant X, Y, Z. No, management ability means making management decisions: when to spray, what to spray, how to spray, when to harvest, how long you need to be out there. Those type of decisions, determining what price you're going to get for your commodity that you're growing. Management decisions, not just hopping on a tractor and spraying and planting and doing all the other things that hired labor does. That does not equate to managerial ability. Excuse me. Now, also we have completing or recently completing a farm mentorship or internship program with an emphasis on management that requires making day-to-day farm decisions. There are some programs that are offered throughout the country that will meet this requirement, including Road Farm Corps, Cultivating Success, Many Hands on Farm Corps, the Samuel Roberts Noble Foundation, Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service, Farmer to Farmer Mentoring Network. And here in Georgia, we have the Georgia Organics Mentoring Program that will meet that requirement. So again, not just being able to hop on the tractor, you got to be able to make management decisions on a day-to-day basis in order to meet that eligibility requirement. Now, we talked a little bit about the farm ownership loan. So the farm ownership loan, you must have managerial abilities stating that you've managed and operated a farm 3 out of the past 10 years to meet that eligibility requirement for that, specifically for the farm ownership loan. For our farm operating loans, which are greater than $50,000, you must have at least 1 full year of management experience in order to be eligible for that direct operating loan. The microloan program, for operating purposes, that year of farming experience does not apply if you have a mentor in place who can mentor you throughout that first year of operation. So those are some differences there when it comes down to managerial ability. And we have borrower training. This is a requirement once the applicant has received a loan through FSA. He or she is required to take borrower training, production and financial management training. And typically, the loan approval officials will provide a list of organizations that offer this training, such as the training that Alcorn offers there. So it should be provided to the applicant after the loan has been closed. And you have 2 years from the date of closing in order to meet that requirement. And in some cases, the applicant may may have enough experience and may not need to take that training, and he or she can request a waiver of borrower training. And sometimes it is granted. Back to my experience, several times we've had experienced farmers come in and receive a direct farm operating loan, and that borrower training has been waived. And lastly, from a general eligibility requirements, we have the applicant must be the owner operator of a family farm. And the definition taken from my handbook is a business operation that produces agricultural commodities for sale in sufficient quantity so that it is recognized as a farm rather than a rural residence. Has both physical labor and management provided as follows. The majority of day-to-day operational decisions and all strategic management decisions are made by the borrower and persons who are either related to the borrower by blood, marriage, or relative for an individual borrower, and for the members responsible for operating the farm in the case of the entity. So everyone must meet that requirement. And in certain cases, in regards to our farm ownership loan, there's a criteria of not being larger than 30% of the average farm size in your county. So the family farm definition may vary by county in different states. And again, it is very important that you are considered a family farm. And that is a requirement that I have seen people get turned down on because they do not meet that criteria of the family farm. And with that being said, I'll take any questions that you all may have. And that was more than 15 minutes, Joy.
You did good. I appreciate that. That's that good coordination we got.
It is. Telepathy.
Okay, Terrick is handling the chat box. I appreciate you, Terrick. Don't want you to feel left out. I got love for you too. So
teamwork made the dream work.
There you go.
So I just wanted to add in there, I see a couple of questions. Someone asked about agritourism. If they wanted to do agritourism and wanted to build a structure for manufacturing a value add produce, what kind of loan would that be? That actually would fall under the realm of rural development, if I'm not mistaken, the value added production program. That will fall under our sister agency. We wouldn't necessarily do agritourism. And then someone asked about grants and requirements. FSA does not have any grants. The only grants that we utilize are for organizations that will provide technical assistance to producers. So it's like a group. It's not for necessarily individuals. So we don't have any grants that we offer per se for FSA. See, if the farmer rancher is required to take the borrower trainer, who pays for the borrower training? Okay, and the farmer does FAS. All right, so with this borrower training question, the borrower actually pays for the training. And FSA does not provide the actual borrower training. We have borrower training vendors. And matter of fact, Alcorn State would be one of those borrower training vendors. We also have online vendors that also provide financial and production training that you can register for as well. Once you actually get the information for your closing documents, that loan official will give you a list of borrower training vendors that you can choose from and actually take the course. But the borrower does have to pay for borrower training.
And in some cases, that training is provided free of charge. It depends on the vendor.
And it may be in different states, but most states, if you're going through FSA, from my past experience of our actually ran borrower training in the national office, and most of them are the national level ones. They are of charge, but then they do have, like Georgia, I think has a program, right? Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see.
And most of them provide you a dinner, so you at least get a free meal out. Well, not a free meal, but a meal out of it.
Right. And Alcorn does a great job at doing this program. That's why they've been doing it for 20 plus years. Let's see where we can find the information on FSA. Nonprofit for Outreach Partnership. We can actually provide that information for you. If you could send me a email and send me your information, I can get that information for the Outreach Partnership. And let's see, have you offered this program for other programs online, Zoom, for example?
I will lean to Iconister, if I'm saying that correctly. This is the first time that we are aware of that a national program like this has been done. So you guys were the test pilot, the guinea pigs per se. So in a few minutes, when I turn this over to SRDC, they'll talk about the evaluation piece. But as we are winding up on time, I'm going to ask Catherine to throw up our poll real quick. And it's the third one that asked, and I asked you guys earlier, based on the information provided through this 3-day training, do you feel more comfortable in facilitating and or developing a financial literacy training for farmers in your state? And I think this question was perfect because Mr. Brooks just talked about borrowers training. If your state doesn't have it, you guys are aware that there's a possible vendor opportunity for your institution to have a partnership with FSA to provide this to their borrowers, either at a cost or at no cost. So that is an opportunity that I think you guys should explore in your state. Mr. Boley has shared his contact information, and so has Mr. Brooks. But you guys can also reach out to me if you don't have their information. I want to take this time to, was somebody about to say something?
This is Anthony. I'm going to say something right quick
Sure.
about the Vendors Borrowers Program. It's 12 hours financial management, but it's also 6 hours of production. So the FSA will decide which one that the applicant need or the borrower needs. But overall, it's pretty much 18 hours full of classroom time for the Vendors Borrowers class for each participant.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing that information. There's 40 of y'all online, but 22 of y'all responded. Well, 23. And so I'll take 90%, 96% yes. So we're glad that we were able to make you feel comfortable or give you that impetus that you needed to launch this type of program in your state. I want to take this time to thank United States Department of Agriculture Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement, as well as my colleagues from the Farm Service Agency. I also want to thank the SRDC at Mississippi State University for providing our technical support and being our support throughout these 3 days. I also want to thank the Alcorn State Team family, Anthony, and Carolyn. I love y'all. We did it. And then I can't leave out my soul sister from University of Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Iris Crosby. Thank you. So at this time, I am going to turn, excuse my bad manners. Let me thank you as the participants for being diligent, for sitting through 12 hours of training via Zoom without passing out. So I want to thank you guys as well. And now I want to turn it over to Catherine with the Southern Rural Development Center to give us our closeout instructions for this training. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Joy. On behalf of the Southern Rural Development Center, we want to extend our thanks as well to all the presenters and participants, and a very special shout out to our Master of Ceremonies for the past 3 days, Ms. Joy Moten-Thomas from Fort Valley State University. We appreciate her. She's amazing. In terms of next steps, we're going to give you the day off to digest all the information that you have seen over the past 3 days. And then tomorrow we will be sending out a post-assessment and evaluation link for you all to fill out. It's a little long, but please stick with us and fill out all of that great information. As Joy mentioned, this is a pilot training, so you guys are the first ones, so we really want to learn from your experience in order to best update this training for the next round of participants. If you have completed all 3 days of training and you complete your post-assessment, you will be receiving several things from us. From the Alcorn team, you will be receiving their record-keeping book, which you can use as a training tool and resource. From SRDC, you will be receiving a full coach's guide So that is full notes and suggestions on how to take this training and utilize it. For every single presentation that you've seen over the past 3 days, you will receive guides for each of those, as well as digital copies of each presentation. So please, again, you'll need to fill out your assessment that you receive tomorrow. Give us your email that you did register with. That's how we're going to be tracking you guys and sending out your info. If you were unable to join for all 3 days, because we know that was the case for some of you, you will still be receiving the recordings of the 3-day sessions as well as the presentations. You just will not get all of the extra notes and physical training materials. So you will be receiving links to those in the coming weeks. As we said, we're going to clean up some of these materials, edit some of these recordings for you, to take out all the breaks and everything. So just give us a little bit of time to do that. And please be looking out for your assessment tomorrow, and make sure you fill that out to the best of your ability. And you'll be receiving some more follow-up information from us at that time. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. And once again, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Thanks for hanging out with us. And hopefully, if you need me, just reach out to me. We're here to serve, and good luck in your respective endeavors in your state.